Welcome to the Courage Barbell Unlimited podcast with your host, legendary powerlifter and strength athlete, Chad Ikes. For most, the journey of strength starts in the gym, but should inevitably expand through all aspects of life. Join us as we discuss all things strength. Now, here's your host, Chad Ikes.
Hey everybody, we're back again. I have another fun interview today with Jeff Johnston, a pretty crazy bench presser who I actually just did a little rep challenge thing for the Olympia and kind of screwed up, but I got to meet a bunch of cool people there, and Jeff was one of them. He actually helped me out with some of the new shirts that I've kind of been away from for a while, which is something we'll talk about here because it's a little different. Jeff, thanks for being on, man.
I appreciate it. Yeah, thank you very much.
So I was looking up your open powerlifting numbers, which I think I have right here. And so you have a best single ply of 615, a best multiply of 738 bench. And you actually have like a 1,900 pound total. Like you have done 3 lift meets.
Yeah. So my best single ply bench is 716. So I did 716 at the WPC Worlds in November, right before the Olympia.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened was I started bench press only when I first got into the gym, and just going into the gym, found a couple power lifters that were local. Hey kid, you got a pretty good bench. Why don't you come and train with us? Started training with them. But it was like, you got to train all three. So squatting and deadlifting and learning. And I think, my first meet I did was a bench only meet, USAPL out. Me and my close friend Max, we drove all the way to Indiana. 3 weeks before the meet, he broke his leg, and we drove out there, and we ended up benching. Didn't know what a bench shirt was. Everybody's got single ply blast shirts on. High performance, heavy duty. Watching everybody walk around like mummies, thinking, "Is this the right meet? Like, where'd you guys get these shirts? Like, we're lifting raw. We're confused, I think like anybody would be." And I ended up doing pretty well. I think I placed fourth. I was 165. I believe I was 17 years old. And I benched 275 with a pause. So I was pretty happy with that. Unfortunately, my buddy Max bombed. Having to keep his foot up and teetering to the side. We weren't used to the pause command. I had the high hopes. I'm going to hit the big 315, 3 wheels aside, and I'm going to shock the world. And I ended up thinking fourth place, benching 275, missing 295 twice, but great experience, and then that kind of moved up to training here. I had a great crew in Brighton, Michigan at a powerhouse gym, and I got to train with like John Ketchum. John Ketchum was a really good friend of Matt Dimmel and a lot of the West Side lifters. So I got to learn a lot because he had went down to West Side and got to train and then bring some of that knowledge back. So we had a lot of guys that also went to the bench seminars for the Metal Militia. Mm-hmm. So that was really cool because, denim back then was the big thing. The Injure Rage X wasn't out yet, so we were all wearing denim shirts. And Sebastian Burns teaching us the Metal Militia way and all the volume in the shirts. So,
and wasn't it Bill Carpenter was doing that too?
Yeah, Bill Carpenter, and I think the guys that I trained with, I've been training with Bob Biersbach my entire life since I was like 19. Mm-hmm. Met him at the gym, but I didn't really start training with him until I was about 19. And he has been with me. I still train to this day. He is always the one that's doing my middle handoffs. I mean, he's always there. He's there for everybody, young and old, comes to every meet. He's been lifting. I believe he did the USAs with Captain Kirk back in the 80s. Mm-hmm. So I know he lifted on Team USA. So, I mean, the knowledge that he has from the 80s, 90s, 2000s, and watching him and looking at these band shirts and seeing what is, happening, it's quite a treat because we just built him a suit, me and Rudy, an overkill suit. And he's like, I can't get the straps on myself. And like, I can't have a suit that's too, so strong that I can't lift in it. And it's like he's used to the very old suits where you put the, straps up yourself. And he's like, I just need something for speed work. He's like, I can't even get this thing on. And he doesn't understand the whole, well, the shirt stretch or the suit stretch, and then you take them in, and he doesn't get that. He's still back old Inzer days, Z suits, some of the beginner metal suits. So we're trying to get him ready for AAPF Nationals, him and my wife. So it's fun. It's fun watching a guy who's been lifting for 40 years trying to get into these newer suits. I mean, he's not strong enough to get into a canvas. He's going to be able to, squat and deadlift and poly. He's probably mid sixes, squatter, deadlifter. He's lifted AAPF his entire life, has some shoulder, back injuries, but I will give him all the props, man. He comes in every Sunday, Tuesday, Friday, helps everybody. So very fortunate to have a guy like that.
It's awesome to see that, to see and talk to somebody that's been through so many different changes in the sport. So when did you do your first bench? I was looking at Open Powerlifting, and they have you, like the oldest meet they have you is 99.
Yeah, so I actually was in 96, USAPL, Three Rivers in Indiana. And then I did another USAPL meet, which would have probably been 97 or 98. It was a battle on the beach, and Dan Severn was there from the UFC, so I got to meet him, fanboy out a little bit. Yeah, he was really big back then when the UFC just started. And I met another training partner of mine who became a training partner probably 10 years later. We did the same meet. So when we started training at Howell Fitness Center, a Total Fitness Center in Michigan Barbell, me and a friend named Joe Smolinski, he was a WPC judge, ran the Can-Am, ran the WPC meets for a while. We did the same meet. So it was kind of cool. Like, we didn't even know we were competing with each other, in the same meet. But that was probably 97. I did, Dan DeFleece used to run the APF in Michigan. I did a couple Dan DeFleece. That would have been 98. I did the Wolverine Open, which was pretty interesting because it would be Harley night the night before. So you'd have all the bikers down at APF Freedom Hill partying the night away, and then you show up in the morning to do a powerlifting meet outside, and all the bikers are still there partying. So they would come watch, and then they would start getting into it. They're looking at all these guys, and they're on the sidelines, and you get like a great group of people, and it all turned out great. And Dan used to run awesome meets, and then that's when like Clay and JJ took over.
Mm-hmm.
I started, obviously Detroit Barbell. I started going Detroit Barbell. So I'd say like 96 was my first. So
yeah, Clay's an awesome dude. I love Clay. I did APF. He had APF seniors there. I did APF seniors there at one point.
The 99 or 2000 or maybe even, he's had a few, I think.
No, it had to have been, because you actually started before I did. I started powerlifting in 99.
Yes. Okay. So it had to be in the 2000s then, right?
Yeah. Because I think I did my first APF seniors was in California in like 02 or 04. I think I just posted some old video of that.
Yeah, I gotta watch that. Now, was that the APF Nash? Was that the seniors that went into like 11 o'clock at night? Where I know they had one that went like really late. Everybody was, like deadlifting at like 10:30, 11.
Yeah, I think that was the one because we deadlifted late at night, and I was just like, gee, by this point, I just want to like get a pull in and be done. I'm ready to go eat and go to bed.
Yeah, that was like the all day. I remember.
Because you've done, because I know Open Powerlifting doesn't get every meet, but you got a lot of meets in here.
Yeah.
And you've always stayed, your body weight has been pretty consistent. I mean, 220s, 242s, it seems like almost the whole time.
Yeah. Done one meet at 275. That was Worlds. I didn't want to cut any weight. I was like 256, 257. And I just was traveling, and I wasn't flying. And so me and my wife made it a honeymoon where we were going to stay down in Tennessee and hit Florida, hit Disneyland, come back, stay in Tennessee again, and then drive home. We want to make a little vacation. And I didn't want to be cutting all that weight, and being in single ply shirts, I just feel like they've got to be dialed in perfect. And if they're not, if you're a little too light, the speed of the shirt comes down so quick and you're not getting enough pop. And if you're too heavy, you're searching the touch. And I feel like with a single ply shirt, if you don't get down in 4 or 5 seconds and get that back out of that hole, it's really hard. I like watching Greg Powell because Greg Powell's the master of single ply. I love watching Jimmy Kolb too. Jimmy is just a freak show. I mean, I've watched him from when he started at 800 pounds to now he's at 1355 or something.
Yeah, just did 1350 something.
Yeah, it's so ridiculous. And meeting him in Ohio and seeing him in Ohio when he was a 220 lifter, and now seeing what he's become. But I really like Greg Powell. I think Greg Powell is probably one of the pound for pound most underrated best benchers. I put him in that equip category with, I would say, obviously everybody loves Kennelly. I mean, Kennelly was the guy back then. A lot of people know Tiny Meeker, Tiny Meeker. And Clay was also a very big bencher in his time. I mean, I'd go to APF barbell meets, and if, people had stuff loaded on his bar and he was ready to warm up, he'd dump their plates and just get right in or just add plates to it. I mean, it was like him and John Zeman and who else? Tom Skyver and Matt Kroc when Matt Kroc was, Janae Kroc when training when he was a junior. I got to watch him come up as a junior lifter to, the Arnold and everything like that. And Greg Gallo. Greg Gallo was a really good super heavyweight. He went against Paul Childress, I remember, for a while. And
wasn't Gallo was a 308, wasn't he?
Yeah, he held the all-time world record at one point, I believe. And him and Paul kind of went back and forth. And I think, didn't you destroy all of them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, I looked up to all those guys. I haven't heard Greg Gallo's name in a while. He was a badass.
Yeah, he was Captain Intensity. I trained with him. He was one of my handlers for quite a while. He lived in Michigan and lived in Howell with his wife, Christy Reski, who was Christy Gallo. But she was quite the bencher too in full power. She was benching probably 5s, pulling 6, squatting 6, and she was very strong. But she was also a gymnast coach. So a lot of people everybody, I remember back when it was probably our prime, it was always everybody talked about Big Iron and they talked about West Side. And then you had the smaller gyms like Orlando Barbell, I know was one, NG one. Then you had Aurora, which was kind of Fran's gym with Jose Garcia and Rudy and those guys and Jason Patrick and them. And then you had your gym. Were you in Washington at the time?
I was actually in Reno. I've been in Reno almost the whole time.
Okay, Reno. I'm sorry. Yeah, but I'm trying to remember all those because we didn't have open powerlifting. We didn't have any of when we started.
It was actually really interesting because it was like 2 or 3 big gyms that everybody knew. And then probably near the end of the 2000s, more gyms started popping up and guys weren't moving to go train at gyms anymore. They had access to decent gyms. And it was kind of a shift, I think, in powerlifting. Because it seems like the time where I was in my prime, there were so many, just big name, well-known characters.
Yes. And it was a circle.
Yeah. And
I loved it. And I miss that. And I don't think people realize how great it really was back then. I don't really think what we see now, and I love the raw lifters. I'm not going to talk bad about them. I love all these new, raw lifters. And I can't even think of their names right now on some of them. But, they're pulling, 1,000 pounds with a kabuki, deadlift bar. And you got 242-pound guys that are squatting 900, bench and mid-5s and pulling 900. Back then, when we started, those were multiply numbers almost at 220, 242. Mm-hmm. Those are solid numbers. And now I'm watching these raw guys. Derek, there's a guy named Derek, Death Grip Derek.
Yes.
I follow a little bit. And then the one guy, Daniel, I'm going to butcher his last name, but he just pulled 1,000. And then there's I'm kind of losing all the names, but I'm amazed with the characters that are kind of coming around today. But back when we were around, I mean, when you went to the WPO or you went to APF seniors, I mean, those were the meets. I mean, there was many more too. I mean, I just felt like at one point, like it would shift from like APF to IPA, and then the SPF got big, and then the WPO was big, and then it had a short run. You know, it was only had a few years, and I was doing strongman. I so wanted to bench on that, you know, WPO platform, and then it was like, okay, I'm getting back into it, and then it disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
And Danny Digg brought back the XPC at the Arnold, and then it was like, okay, thank God for Danny Digg, you know, because I never thought I was going to get. I mean, I went to every single Arnold and watched every single bench bash. I mean, then I'd go to the other side and I'd watch the WPO Super Finals, you know, and
It was like
so
I think now I think like the Kern Open, like the ones that have some money, I think you get a lot of the top lifters, but it doesn't
yes,
seem like you said back in the day, like if you went to a WPO meet or you went, I remember the first time one of my training partners qualified for APF seniors, like he was done the first day he went there. He was like totally overwhelmed. He's like, "Oh my God, there's Chuck. Oh my God, there's Paul. Oh my God, there's," and it was just like everywhere you went, you see all these huge top name characters that you've been reading about in Powerlifting USA or you've been watching on YouTube. And when I do go to meets now, it doesn't, you might have one or two of those guys, but you don't have all of them there.
no,
And I mean, I
no,
remember one of my favorite things about the WPO was getting there. We'd all get there a couple of days early and you'd be hanging out in the lobby and just look across the lobby and you're just like, this is awesome. Like there's all
yeah,
these huge name guys and everybody's just sitting around bullshitting.
like 60 of the greatest lifters,
Mm-hmm.
and like everybody's just talking to everybody, everybody's just mingling, everybody's just having a good time, and you know, and I could just imagine after the meet, you know, everybody getting together, going to eat, going out to have dinner and stuff like that, and
Mm-hmm.
stories, you know, and the training stories and everything like that, because now we see all the stories, you know, we see all the great lifts, we see all the, you know, I mean, I think social media is the highlight reel now, you know, like today I posted that one lift and, you know, I missed it and I posted the 3 red lights, and it's like, people got to see that too, because you know there's times where I'm going to fail 2-3 weeks and then I'm going to have one good day. It's not like I go to the gym and I just hit these great, you know, benches every week, and it's just not like that. And I think people don't realize that there's a lot of hard work that goes into this, and especially with, you know, multiply and single ply lifting. Especially multiply is, you know, you're 1 inch away from disaster.
Yeah, I
And
think I always try to bring that up, especially in these podcasts, because I totally agree. I think people get with social media now, they get a very unrealistic view of what's actually going on. And I had Laura Phelps on it. She's like, yeah, I bombed out for like almost a year. She goes, I kept bombing out of meets. I thought I was going to get thrown out of West Side. And like people nowadays, they see all the main stuff. And if people do meets and they don't do good, they just don't post anything. And it's like,
yeah,
well, we all have bad meets. We all have bad trainings. I mean, I literally, when I was squatting 1,200 pounds, there's days I'd go in at 800, 800, it'd feel like a house. And I'd be like, that's it, man. This feels like shit. I'm done, but people don't want to talk about that and they don't want to post that. And even with you, I was, first of all, the 3 red lights thing, when you post, you like one board, 3 red lights, that just made me laugh. And then, like, people don't understand how long it takes.
yeah,
Like you're benching 700 pounds now and you're only at 242. That didn't happen overnight. You've been lifting since like 90, you've been competing since 97. Like,
yeah, no break.
yeah,
How about
and that was one of the things I looked at through the open powerlifting is I'm like, you were pretty consistent for a long time.
yeah? I've been very fortunate, very lucky, and I've had a slap tear, labrum tear that wasn't to a point where I had to have surgery. I've had some rotator cuff issues, micro tears, tore my groin a couple years ago, tore my hamstring. I've got some type of meniscus issue right now. So like, it's hard because like I always wanted to do full power, and I always felt like I could keep up in the squat maybe. My bench would always outshine everybody in the bench. So I basically think if I can deadlift their bench, I can beat their deadlift with my bench. I just got to stay good in the squat. And so I remember I came back after a while, after a lot of injuries, and I did the Arnold Elite meet, because I haven't totaled anything, so I couldn't do the pro. And I went in, and I remember everything feeling good. I think I was going to open at like 750 squat. I was 220. I opened up at like a 645 bench, and then like a 560 deadlift, which deadlift has never been my strong point. And I get up there, and I'm in the warm-up room, and here it is, like you said. Now it's the XBC. There's Brian Carroll, Clint Smith, Greg Penora's walking around, and then you got all these great lifters that you've grown up watching and seeing, and like they're all there, and now they're helping their great lifters, and then you got the metal guys there, you got overkill guys here, you got Inzer guys here, you've got the best of the best here now. And I remember standing up with like 700 pounds and falling backwards, and Bob, my guy, like, relax, you're here, it's fine, do it again. Stood up, fell backwards. I'm like, what is going on? Like, this is a cakewalk. Why am I? And you never know what's going to happen. So I'm like, okay, let's switch my opener. And I went down to like 685. And I remember JJ Thomas was one of the judges, and a couple other guys. And I remember bearing this thing, like took my briefs off, just put my suit on. And I mean, I sat all the way to my ankles in a multiply Titan suit. And I remember JJ red lighted me. And I think he did it just for the fun of it, to mess with me, because it was deep enough. And Bob's just like, he just red lighted you. And I'm just thinking like, that's okay. And I end up doing really well. I end up getting all my squats, all my benches, all my deadlifts, and took second place. And that's when I think I totaled like 19 something. And I just went through probably 8 years of just injuries, And I don't think people realize like how many little injuries hinder so much stuff. Like, yeah, I wanted to squat 800. It just wasn't going to happen. I wanted to bench 700. I got 675. I wanted to pull 625. I think I did 582 or something. But it's like, I think sometimes you get in the gym and you realize that what you're going to do in the gym is not always what you're going to do in a meet. There's so many other variables. I didn't expect to be in the warm-up room and fall backwards 3 times warming up with my heavier squats. But things happen. But it's also like, sometimes I felt like there was people that would happen to, and then they were done. They just lost it. Like, they couldn't come back from that. And I always wanted to be the lifter that, if I'm down 2 lifts to 1, I'm going to get that third one. Like, I always felt like a good pressure lifter. I felt like I always handled everything better under pressure. And I always felt like I always hit PRs on the platform more than I did in the gym. Like the 716 single ply bench I just did that broke it was the 242 WPC world record, Masters and Open. I never took that in the gym. The last bench I took was 705. And then I went there and just said, okay, I'm going to do 716. And then I jumped all the way to 744. I should have just went 722, 727. But I ended up going 744 because I was so into the moment. I'm thinking, I'm going to break my all-time, because I had 738s, my best multiply. I'm going to beat it single ply. And I got halfway up, and it's just like, you feel that shirt, just like, okay, I'm not going to get this. And you hold it, and you're just trying to, like, brace yourself in, let your air out, and trying to wedge. And it's just like, it feels like it's forever. Because you're just thinking like, okay, are my elbows locked? And you're just trying to stay wedged. And then you get up, and the first thing you do is, I don't want to look at the lights. Because I feel if you get up and you look at the lights, you're questioning your lift. So I always get up and like, yes, and then it's like, oh, I got turned down. It's like most people I watch, when they hit a lift and they don't know, the first thing they do is get up and they turn and hit the lights. When you hit a lift and you hit a lift, you just get up. You don't look at the lifts. You don't look at the judges. You've got it. So I've always had that like thing on the platform, like, don't get up and look at the lights, because now you're questioning what the judges are going to call.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting point of view that actually kind of makes sense to me. Especially if you have a judge that's like, I don't know, and he doesn't hit the lights, and he looks at you and he's like, oh no. That's interesting. Yeah. But that's very true though. Like a lot of people. And well, I hear this all the time too. I'll do a meet when I hit this weight, or I'll do a meet when I get to this level. It's like, no, you need to start doing meets because you have to train meets, because a
Yeah.
meet is not like a gym. You're going to sleep in a different place. You're going to be in a different city. You're going to lift in a completely different area. You might lift an equipment you've never seen before or used before. Like there's any number of different variables, and you have to start doing meets to train and learn that and
Yeah.
get good at that. And I'm like you, where I don't really care what I hit in the gym. Like I want to hit it on the platform. So it's funny because I trained at American Iron Flex Gym and American Iron for years. And I still, when I go back there, I hear stories and I'm like, there's stories that aren't even true. Like they say I hit all these big numbers in the gym and I didn't give a shit what I hit in the gym. Like I would go open with meets of weights I never even did.
Yeah.
And it was the same thing. Like I'm notorious for, I'll miss the first two for whatever reason, come back and just nail the third. And a lot of people, they miss the first one and they're so flustered they can't even step back and go, well, I just missed that because I got loose, or I just missed that because I didn't sit back enough, or like just go, I didn't miss it because I'm not strong enough. I just missed it because I didn't hit it right. So big deal. I'm going to hit it right on the next one.
Yeah.
And
Because it's
that's
like
mental training.
yeah. And I hate to say this word, but I used to look for the mental midgets in my class.
Mm-hmm.
I would look for them, and I would, because some of these meets are cash meets, and when I go to a meet, I know I'm not the strongest guy. I know I'm not Jimmy Kolb. I know I'm not this. I'm not that. But I would go in there and I'd warm up with them, and I'd be like, man, that looks a little slow today. Just kind of little chirp here, there, little chirp there, or do something I know, make it look really quick, really fast.
Mm-hmm.
When they really slow. And I love doing that at like the world meets. I always felt like I was always going against like Russia's best benchers back then, like Palov, who was like in his 40s at the time, and I went against Kutcher. Kutcher was really good bencher over there. I one-upped him one time with no wrist straps on. So it was 2012, and this is going to be my favorite meet of all time. My grandmother helped raise me with my mother growing up, and then till my mom met my stepfather, who'd been married my entire life and raised me. So my grandmother was always very instrumental in my life because she used to come to my meets because my mom couldn't. My mom would get all like teary eyed and like think I was going to hurt myself, and so she'd be like, "I can't watch this." So my grandma would go because my grandma lived by Taylor, and my uncle Danny would go. So my uncle Danny would pick up my grandma, and she would come to all the Detroit barbell meets, And so it was like when I knew that she was there, it was like I'm gonna smoke everybody here. I don't care who's showing up. I remember I'd battle Tommy Westhoff, I battled Tim Hensley, Eric DeCaris. I mean, we had a good group that would battle at every state meet, and then we'd go to the Arnold and battle again. Even though we were fierce competitors, we never talked down about each other. We always got along. But once we got under the bar, man, everything was out the window. And I just remember 2012, I'm heading to Vegas. I'm getting ready to get onto my flight. My mom calls me and my grandmother passed. And oh my God, I can't believe it. I was like, why couldn't she just hold on till I got back? I'm like, this is going to be my first world championship. I wanted to bring it back, show her, because she'd been to all these meets, and now I'm going. So, like, I remember just getting on the plane and, like, being so nervous now and just thinking, like, okay, I got to get there. Everything will be fine. I'll weigh in. I get there, and I'm, like, 18 pounds overweight. And I'm like, I got to cut 18 pounds in, like, a day. And so, like, I remember borrowing this guy's scale and talking to, I think it was Croc at the time, and he's like, just make a sauna in the bathroom. So I did the homemade sauna in the bathroom. And so I cut like 18 pounds in one day. And I remember I was like white. I was a ghost. I remember like laying on the bed, taking my breaks. And my friend Eric DeCaris from Detroit Barbell would come up and check on me. He's like, let's go weigh in. And I remember I missed it like 3 times, and they're like, this is your last chance. Like, weigh-ins are over. You're the last guy. And I just made it. And I remember just looking up thinking, like, that's her. She saved me. And I remember I left at the time. I went and ate all the food I could get. I went to like the Bellagio and I just crab butter, got right back to where I was the day before, smoked my first 2 lifts, didn't even need to take my third, but I wanted to take the third just so I could I beat all you motherfuckers. Sorry about swearing, but I was like, I own this day. I forgot my wrist wraps. So I get out on the actual platform and I'm getting all psyched up and I'm getting ready and I'm at like a 12 right now. You know, I can't hear anyone. And I hear, "Where are your wrist wraps?" And I look down and I'm like, I don't have any wrist wraps on. And it's a 700-pound bench. It was like $699. And I was like 220 and I'm thinking, well, fuck it. And so I lay back, pick up the bench, bring it down, hear the press, bring it up, lock it, and get up. And I could just hear everybody in the crowd just hollering and screaming. And then my buddy's texting me, Tim, he's like, "You just did that 700 pounds without wrist wraps on." I was like, I was going to time out. And it was like, I could have just been like, "Oh, no, you know what? I don't need this. I already won the competition." But it was like, no. I came there to dominate. I got my first place. I got my first world record. I got my first everything. And it was just like, that meet I will always remember because that was like at the time of my life where it was like everything else was going bad. I was, I had a lot of bad things going on in my life, and my grandma had passed and I didn't want her to see her, I didn't want her to see like a failure, because I felt like I was failing in other things in life, but this I wasn't. Like this I was like the best at. And then like for her to pass, it was just like, man, I'm not going to show her. But yeah, she was there with me the whole time. And I will never, ever forget that senior nationals WPC Worlds. And it was in Las Vegas. And I just remember, celebrating with all the Detroit barbell guys. And like Clay came up to me, gave me a big hug. He knew everything that was going on. And Dave Murphy, him giving me a big hug. And I met Shelly Dennison that day and started doing work with Iron Rebel. That's when Iron Rebel first started. Mm-hmm. And my buddy Joe Fargo, I remember he had a couple bad meets. And, he's coming in and he ends up breaking all his records and taking first place. And it was just like all the bad shit that had happened, everything just came together. And it was just like a perfect meet. And it's like, I'm here with all my best friends, all my lifting buddies, family members because powerlifting is a family, man. Like your training partners and the people you train with, those are family members. And when stuff happens to them, it happens to you too. So for all that to happen and then to actually win, it wasn't just me winning for myself. It was me winning for my gym, me winning for my friends, me winning for my family. It's not just me. I always looked at like I'm representing everybody, like, not just myself. I'm representing the gym, my powerlifting team, my sponsor, like Rudy, mm-hmm. He doesn't make gear for free, I mean, all that stuff costs. And, to be able to go there on the biggest stage and have all that stuff happen and actually come through. I mean, I know you've done it. Yeah. You've been there, Well,
the first thing I was thinking of is that I did a video a long time ago where I was out in the desert and I kind of talk about that place I go to on the platform. And there's nothing in the world to me like that feeling where you just convince yourself you're totally and utterly unstoppable. Like where you look down and go, yeah, well, I forgot my wrist wraps. I don't give a shit. I'm getting it anyway. Like that's irrelevant to me. Like I'm still going to get this lift. And to put yourself in that place is so amazing. And to just experience that and feel that like I can't be stopped. Like I truly cannot be stopped. And that's such a great thing. And it's interesting what you said about your partners and stuff, because I had my team, like I was invited to other gyms and Louis tried to get me to come to West Side. And I'm like, yeah, I don't really know about that. Like I kind of need to have more control to do my own thing. And I built my own team. And to this day, even though I don't train with any of those guys anymore, because they're all off doing their family stuff, I'm still part of their family. They're part of my family.
Yeah.
And it was like, that time was so intense that it's a connection that'll last forever. And I wonder how often that happens these days. I hear
Like they just like gym hop. It feels.
Yeah, it's like I hear so much shit about powerlifting, and it's like, man, we need to not focus on this mid-level social media shit. Let's focus on the high-level guys and how they're actually getting along. And guys like you still have a team of guys that you've been lifting with for years that support each other. And when you go to a meet, like, your team shouldn't be like, I want to do this meet. I want to do this meet. It's to be like, hey, I'm thinking about this meet. Will you be able to help me? And then what meet do you want to do? And I don't see that happening as much as it doesn't seem like it's happening as much as it used to.
Yeah.
And I wonder too if part of that isn't you're a raw lifter. You can go to a meet by yourself. I mean, you still really should. It still makes a big difference having somebody there with you. Yeah. Where it's like, dude, just sit the hell down and lift. I'll tell you when you need to start warming up. I'll tell you when you need to go to the platform. You just relax. You're either lifting or relaxing. That's your job today.
Exactly.
But you can train by yourself raw. You can go to a meet raw. I mean, you can't go to a raw meet by yourself. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. And I wondered if that kind of has killed a little bit of the team aspect of it.
And I think because the raw lifting, like you said, you can go by yourself. You don't feel like you need anyone. Like, oh, I can get a guy to wrap my knees, or I can get a guy to handle me, and I know what I'm doing, and I know, like, when you go to a multi-ply or even single ply, you go to a equipped powerlifting meet, you need someone to load the weight. You're not loading weight. You need someone to help you put your squat briefs on, put your suit on. You need someone to help wrap your knees. You're not wrapping your knees in equipment.
If your suit fits right and you can wrap your knees, your suit doesn't fit right.
Like, I always laugh about that. I was like, how are you wrapping your own knees right now? Like, no, you got to let someone else do it. And I understand, like, everybody gets anxious and, things take over and they start doing things they're not used to doing. But that's when you got that crew like, hey, stop, relax, chill out, settle down. Because I would warm up too quick. And then I'd look at Bob and he would be like, slow down, take a breath, relax. Because I'm already sweating.
Yeah.
I'm already geeked. I'm already there. I'm in the zone. Like, but I got 45, 50 minutes. Like, you don't want to peter yourself out before you get to the platform. And I think there's a lot of guys that happens to. They're not warming up. They're almost working out. When you have that team there, they're like, hey, no, 2 reps, not 10 reps. Let's single. Okay, how did that feel? Well, this looked like this. You can't see where the bar path is perfectly. I mean, if you're lifting your head up, then you're probably collapsing your chest. Or if you have to lift your head up, well, maybe it's because your shirt's so tight. And, I'm guilty of that because I like to wear the tightest gear. Me and Rudy always talk about, he's like, you wear the most aggressive shirts, bench shirts I've ever seen. But that's how I learn. And that's how I know I'm going to get the most weight out of it. And so, like, I need 2-3 people there because I'm not going to be lifting plates, getting everything set up. I've got everybody there. I got a 3-man handoff. I'm just coasting. Mm-hmm. And then right when they call my name, then I can flip the switch. And then it's get into that mode where nothing can stop me. Because I feel like once I step on the platform, I can handle any weight that's on that platform. If I go up there and I'm scared of the weight or I don't think I can do this, then I'm done. I'm walking away from the sport. That's when I feel it's time to go. But until I feel that, or until I can't compete in the open anymore, I'm going to keep lifting. And I'm going to keep lifting in open. And if I break master world records, cool. It's great. But I'm always going to shoot for those open records. I don't think I'll ever beat like Coker or Luendo or any of those guys, but, I can still have goals to shoot for them, mm-hmm. break my own personal, PRs, because when I look at it now, like I love the band shirts and I might be able to do some records in the band shirts at 242, 220, but we lifted during the prime, the best time of multiply lifting, and I don't think it'll ever go back. We're not going to have people like you and like Andy Bolton and, some of like the West Side guys. I mean, Dave's in a new stratosphere right now, and there's guys getting close. I would really love to see Daniel Bell get into equipment. I really like Daniel.
There's a couple raw guys that I keep thinking, man, what if? What
Yeah,
if?
there's some guys that I just think like just start with single ply. Just put a brief on. Just
Mhm.
try. Because I feel like the raw lifting, you only going to get that so much. You can only do that so much because if you look at a lot of the multiply guys, there's a lot still there. But I mean, when the I'm not single ply, but when raw really got popular, it was the Lillibridges, it was Dan Green, Brandon Lilly, um, Herbie, Stan. I mean, I think you can only obtain that much strength and that much, I call it horsepower, for so long before something goes, and a lot of those guys, they're still lifting numbers that I'll never accomplish, but I think you can go from raw to single to multiply. Like, as the injuries come on, that's why I started wearing the gear. I lifted raw. Then I realized, okay, I'm starting to injure my body a little bit more. Let's try multiply. Okay, this is working great. And then let's go back to single ply. I got injured. Let me try single ply. Wow, this is a little new. I kind of like this. Then I go back to multiply. And I go back to single ply. And then I remember getting hurt and starting all brand new, benching the bar and building my raw back up and thinking, okay, I'm as strong as I'm going to get raw right now. So let's try a shirt again. And thinking I'm never going to be able to break these numbers. And then here I am at 43 years old, hitting a 66-pound PR, more than I've ever done in my entire life, and thinking, wait a minute, what have I been doing wrong?
Yeah.
All years, what did I change now at 43 that I didn't do at 32 to be able to bench this? Because I remember looking at videos and being like, my best single ply bench was 2012 at 675 off of one board. And now I'm benching, I did hit 727, but I had a side spotter grab the weight and it teetered when they were racking it. So they called it, but I was like, I lifted that weight. Like, that would have been 70 something pound PR. And so it got me to the point of like, let's try this band shirt. And then when we went to that competition and speaking with Keith and Rich, guys who have been in these shirts for like 4 years, and seeing you there and AJ and meeting Hunter, it was like, this is now I can move into this. And now I can get into that maybe 1,000-pound bench at 242, which I know I can't do in polyester, but I can probably do this in band. And then I think I've worked up to like 905, and I got about a board away, and I came out of it, and it was just like, when I got done, I was like, wow, this is completely different than I ever thought. I was like, this is really addicting. So then I really realized, like, I'm never going to talk bad about anyone lifting in any type of equipment, no matter what equipment I am or raw, because these band shirts are really effing cool. Because it was going in and doing all those reps, and like at the end was like, I'm not all beat up. Like, my shoulders feel okay. I just repped 500 pounds for 14 reps. Like, I could never do that in a single ply or a poly shirt.
Mhm.
I'd, I'd probably peter out at 7 or 8, with a loose shirt. And then not only did we do that, like you guys did, what was it? You guys did 6, 7, and what was the other one you guys had to do?
I
Was
think
it 5?
we did 5, 6, and 7.
Yeah, you did 5, 6, 7, and we did 4, 5, and 6, but we did it backwards. So we started with a heavy and go back.
Yeah.
I look at that and I'm like, we would have never done that in poly.
No.
Could you imagine an SVP or a metal shirt or anything trying to do that competition?
Yeah, no, you didn't want to rep anything in those shirts.
One rep max is that's it. Maybe you could do a double, and it's just like, all right, I see why everybody loves these shirts. But I'm scared for these newer lifters that are lifting way too much weight, way too fast. Like, you have to lift 350 raw, and now you're handling 800 pounds in a band shirt, and you never went 5, 6, 7. You might have did a board press with a couple of those weights, but you haven't had years of training.
Yeah.
I think people don't realize, like, Jimmy Cole's been lifting his entire life,
And it's been a process.
Yes, he just didn't. Okay, I benched 700-800 pounds, and then I put a band shirt on, and now I'm 11, 12, 13. Like Rob Farrell, who started a lot of the F8, or who's the founder of the F8, and Rob Farrell is a super strong guy. He was a good multi-ply lifter. He was benching well over 700 pounds in a multi-ply shirt. So when people see him at 220 benching 1,000, and they're thinking, well, I can do at least 800 or 900. And it's like, well, what have you done before that? Well, I did 315 for 5 or 6. And I'm like, and you think your body's going to handle that much weight? Well, I mean, he's not that big. And you're just like, whoa, pump the brakes. But he's a seasoned vet. You're brand new. You're going to snap your arm off. I just don't understand why everybody wants everything so fast. Like, no one wants to put the work in anymore, it seems like. The raw lifters have to put the work in. I get that. And there's other ways that helps them, but they still got to put the work in. But with a band shirt, I'm watching guys that should never be handling 800-900 pounds. And I mean, they're doing it, and I just don't understand if that's really.
I basically walked in I hadn't had a shirt on since like 2014, I think. Mm-hmm. And I did like one session at a buddy's gym, and I did one session at Elite. Then I had 2 weeks to get ready for the Olympia.
Yeah.
And the one that got really crooked, I think it was one of the 700s. Like I did something to my shoulder and elbow. I think it's just out. I'm actually going to go see a chiropractor next week, hopefully. But it was like, yeah, I mean, but I'm on the other end of the spectrum. I'm like, dude, I don't care anymore. Like, I'll do stupid stuff. I don't give a shit. But yeah, if you're a young lifter and you're looking for some long-term shit, you can't just jump into it, because you still have tendon strength, you still have ligament strength. And yeah, that shirt supports you some, but these things are still handling those loads, and you need to build up to those loads.
Yeah, think about your wrist, forearm.
Well, you got guys like my girlfriend Amber, she had a stress fracture, and luckily she found it and decided to let it heal. Like, so you got guys that actually have been handling these weights that are getting injuries just from the amount of weight that it is, and they're building up to it. So you think you're going to be, I raw 225, now I'm going to do 8 or something. Like, it's a whole different ball game, man.
Yeah, and I try to explain to my friends at work and stuff, and they're like, oh, you can hit 1100 with that shirt. And it's like, I would be happy first, so let's start at 800. Mm-hmm. Look at that. I worked up to 900. I've worked up to, I think I've done 955, like off a 2 board, and handled it pretty good. But, I had to take a month off. My wrists were jacked after that. My forearms swelled up like this big at the top. And I remember taking my wrist straps off and seeing it all swollen up. And my wife's an ICU nurse, and she's like, what's wrong with your forearms? I'm like, I don't know. And she's like, that's not good. I'm like, that's powerlifting, babe. That's just, what happens. She's like, no, it's not, I'm just looking at her like, well, don't worry, your neck. Let's go. Let me pull your shirt down. I got her in. Like, she had her labrum re-anchored and everything, and so it still kind of bothers her. But I didn't think that she was going to get into it, because first it was like, I want to bench my body weight raw. Okay, we did that. Maybe I want to try a shirt. So I bought her one of those F6 beginner shirts. She benches 180 in. I think I need a little more aggressive shirt now. I think I'm ready. I'm like, here it starts. I'm not saying it, but I'm like, here it starts. So I get her another F6, and then I buy her a Katana single ply super. Someone had it. They just didn't want it. I'm like, this will fit her. It's got the neck and everything. She puts it on. She gets her hands out. She breaks her elbows, and that thing locks up, and she's just like deer in the headlights, like, pull it off me. And I pick it off. I'm like, okay, so this is what a real competition shirt is. She's like, yeah, let's just stay in the other one for a little while. And then she got up to like 200, and then we got her in a tighter F6. and then that shirt ended up getting loose on her somehow. I don't know what happened. I think we might have went a size up. And then she's like, I want to get down to 165 again, because she was competing at 181, but she was only 167, 170. She's going to hate me talking about her weight, but this is how we are. And I got her a shirt from Rudy. So I got her a new line single ply shirt, and she tries it on, and she's like, now she's doing all the bencher stuff where you like pull the chest plate apart, and I'm watching her, and it's just like, man, life is good, man. Life's real good. This is great. Like now she gets it. Now she's handling like, I think she did like 275 off a 2 or a 1 board. And I'm thinking like, the girl who wanted to bench 165 is now handling 275. But it's been a 2-year process. It's not like, and I was like, hey, do you want to try my band shirt? And she's like, no, I don't want nothing. No. She's like, I like my shirts. I like my single ply. I'm like, let's try a multi-ply shirt. She's like, no, I'm good single ply. And I'm like, okay, that sounds good. But it's just like having someone there with you, like every Sunday she's up, ready to go. Today she had to work. She works in ICU, so she works like every weekend, but like every week we're talking about our workouts. Every week we're, thinking about, okay, what are we going to do? Like today she's like, you got to hit something big today. You got to do something big today, and it's like, yeah, I do. I got to do something big today, because it's always nice to have someone there cheering you on. And I know with Amber and like you guys feed off each other, you watch her lift and that inspires you. You inspire her back, and you can teach her things that no one's ever, she might have never even thought about. And it could be one little thing that you've seen for years. And you're just like, well, if you do this, turn your foot or do this a little bit, this is going to happen. And then it clicks with her. And then she looks at you and you guys are like, yep.
Yeah.
That's what I like now. Like, I'm so excited to take my wife to the Cincy Pro-Am, the women's Pro-Am, because, she's going to be the little fish in the pond, but I want her to see, like, you can do this. Like, don't ever think you can't. Now, I know you can't squat and deadlift because of medical stuff, but you'll be able to do these big bench meets. You'll be able to do the amateur and do the bench meet and compete with the good lifters. Because she went to APF Nationals last year, and guess who she faced? Crystal Tate.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm like, no, honey, you're competing against yourself.
Yeah.
Don't worry. Crystal is a seasoned vet and one of the best, and then Crystal didn't have a good meet. We're sitting there waiting for our best lifter awards and everything. And I'm thinking, yeah, I got the biggest bench. I broke the world record. I'm going to get best lifter. Melissa Barilla Johnston, best lifter. So she's like, me? She gets up. I'm in the bathroom. I don't even get to go get a picture of her. Luckily, Dave Murphy was there with his wife, and they take pictures. And I come back, and she's like, I got best lifter. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm going to get one, too. This is going to be perfect. Our first nationals together. And I go to stand up, and they're like, Dave Murphy, best lifter. And I'd look at Murph, and I go, 70-year-old man, aren't you? How old are you, Dave? He's Uncle Efficient. We go back and forth. Like, I'll one time, and then he'll beat me. And then it was just so cool to see her up there with all those great lifters, and she's getting her picture taken. And it was like her stepmom's there, her sister's there, her sister's daughter's there. They're all cheering her on, and it was like, she did some CrossFit because of the shoulder. She couldn't do a lot. And now she got to come into this sport, and she feels accepted, and she likes everybody. And then she's got girls watching her on, Instagram. And so she's like, this girl's following me. She's such a cool lifter. And she's like, then I got my friend that's a nurse that is going to be doing this meet. Maybe we can go see it. And it was like, oh, man, finally. That's the stuff I look forward to now.
I think that goes back to kind of what we were talking about earlier with the teams and stuff. Because I'm once I get this shoulder and elbow thing healed up, I'm going to continue to play with the band shirts. But I'm more of a coaching at this point. But even when I did, like the guys on my team, when the guys on my team would do good like that, man, I'd tear up.
Yeah.
Like,
oh yeah.
It was more to me than when I did good. Like when I did good, I was like, yeah, I knew I'd do good, whatever, And so there's this definite part where helping people do good and seeing them do good, it's almost better than doing good yourself sometimes in some ways.
Yeah. And that's why she was like, I want to lift with you. Like, no, I don't want to lift with you. I want you to do this because I want it to be all about you. because when I get there, everybody's going to make it about me. And it's not. So I want you to do this all about you. And yeah, I get like you do, man. I got to turn around. I'll start tearing up. My lip will be like, are you going to cry? And I'm like, no, I'm not crying. I'm fine. Hold on.
Just ate an onion.
Yeah. Like, I remember we went and watched this movie, and it was like the first time I cried in front of my wife. And she was like, what? What? You're crying? What are you crying about? And it was the movie, the Kurt Warner story movie. And it was, and
I knew it would be about sports.
Yeah, it was so bad. It was like the guy went through complete hell to get in the NFL, and then at the end, something with his father, and I just lose it, man. And I walk out really quick, right to the bathroom, and she's sitting there outside the bathroom smiling at me like, you were crying, weren't you? And then we come home one night, she throws that same movie on, man, same exact part. Got me again. And she just starts dying laughing. Like, it's okay, honey, for me to be emotional sometimes. And when I see her do things that she doesn't think she can do, and then I see her do it, I kind of walk away and I get a little like, little in the feel goods, and it's like, I feel the same way. Like, there's times where it's like, I don't do as good as I thought, but one of my teammates hit a 10-pound PR, biggest lift of his life. I'm hollering, I'm, doing everything because like, I am so happy at that point. And people are looking at me like, God, why is this guy just so happy? It's like, cause you guys don't know like how hard this guy's worked. You don't know what his story is, and that's where it's like, what I like about social media is like, you can kind of tell that story and you can kind of follow along with it, but people really don't know, like when you have that team, that family, like you were talking about, like today I had a woman that came in that trained with us 10 years ago, one of the best single ply benchers. She's a raw bencher. She's starting to come back and train. She's square one, And I got my man Bob there, who's there every Sunday, no matter what. The one thing I will say about Bob is 2013, maybe the year after, I was getting ready for the Arnold on the main stage, biggest meet, obviously trained all year for it, put everything away. Bob's mom passed away. He showed up that day to help me bench.
Mm-hmm.
Take a day off. He's like, I looked at him and I said, what are you doing here? He goes, we got bench day. And he smacks me on the side and he's like, you got a fucking meet to train for. And I just turned around and I was just like, nothing's going to stop me now. We got there. He's got really bad back. I mean, really bad. He gets there and I see him hobbling and I'm thinking, damn it. They only want, like 2 people that they want to do the lift off. Like I can't have my 3-person lift off. And so everybody's kind of mad about that. We're like, let us have our handoff people. We'll slide them out and let the guys come in and do it, because it's like, I'm opening up at 7 something or whatever, and Matt Hauser was there and he's opening up at 8. And it's like, we got these young kids that are, the side handoff guys. They don't know the counts or anything. And I know Bob's hurting because he's leaning over on his side, all hunchback, all one side. I don't want one of these guys to lift up too much and throw his back out. He just drove 5 hours here to help me out. It's not going to benefit him. He came down there, did my lift off, got all 3 lifts, one best lifter. And it was like, this guy is always going to be there no matter what. So I need to be there when he needs me there. No matter how bad I feel, no matter what's going on, my most important lifts, he's always been there. So he'll always be like, you're coming next Sunday, right? And I'll be like, yeah, you're benching, right? Putting a shirt on. Because it's only a certain time where he feels good enough to put his shirt on. And then we have our buddy Matt. Matt today came in, didn't even bench. He loaded plates the whole time. Another friend, Matt, came from another gym, local gym from Rochester Performance Gym. They handle all the APF meets for us now. He came in. He worked right in the group. My other buddy, Pat, came in. He only did a couple things. Everybody stayed until me and Matt were done out of our shirts. No one left. They loaded the plates. They let us take our time. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, that's a good team, and that is what it's about. And those are the stories I love hearing and I love telling because, like you said, people generally don't know. Like if I get a guy lifting, you may know some about his lifting, but you don't know what's going on in his personal life. You don't know what adversities he's facing and overcoming to still compete.
Oh yeah.
And like you said, when I had my team, I'm training 4 or 5 different guys, and I'm trying to train everybody so we can be there to help each other, but everybody needs something different. So like there would be a time where I'm like, dude, you're deloading next week, man. They would still be in the gym with us to load plates and help out because they knew that when somebody else was deloading, they were going to be in helping. I just don't know if I see that as much anymore.
No, like I got a guy, Larry, who's on kidney dialysis. He comes in, spots, loads, comes in early. His wife tells him, hey, we got to go to church today. You need to come in a little early. We all set up a time. We try to make it in earlier. Some of us can, some of us can't, but at least we get enough people when he needs to lift. He raw lifts. He's still competing at a high level. And, and it's like he comes in no matter what. And this guy just getting off dialysis.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and he's still showing up, making sure everybody's taken care of, making sure. Today he came in. He trained early in the morning and he had to leave, but he was just like, all right, I just don't want you guys to die on me today. You guys are good. You guys got spotters. And it's like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And it's like, and Larry, at his time was one of the best raw benchers in the world. And now that because of his health and everything, and he's got to train at a different level, but he's still, for his age and everything, at a really high level. I mean, he's raw benching more than me and he weighs less than me, and I'm pushing my ass off. And it's just like, just to see him, when everybody told him, no, you can't lift and no, you can't do this. And he's got a port and he's still coming in and he's repping 405 out.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like pounds. And you're just like, that's awesome. That's hard, and then that you look at Larry and you just like something bad goes on and you're like, you know what? My life's not that fucking bad. I'm fucking pretty goddamn lucky, like what am I fucking complaining about? And then that gets that level up a little bit, and then you start, okay, now you get into the mood, because everybody feeds off each other. I feel like if you got a toxic gym, then I understand, get away from it. If people are toxic and it's a bad environment, then I feel like you got to leave. But if not, and it's not toxic and you got great people and you got people that motivate you and who truly care like family, then why would you ever leave?
Yeah.
There's no point. The only time you should leave is if it's toxic, it's bad for your mental, and you're not moving forward. Then I feel okay, because you know what? It's going to be better when you leave. It probably might be better for them when you leave too. And that would be the only time. But I feel like family in the training group, I've been friends with these guys for 20 years,
Well, I think that's why even like some of the guys you said they were lifting at the highest level, now they're maybe not, but they're still lifting. They're still coming in. They're still helping. So the training is good for their health. It's the camaraderie is good for their health. Like it's all good. There's no downside to it.
Yeah, it's good for their mental. They have something to do. They're still getting out. They're doing what they love. Everybody's happy. Everybody's there. We spend 3-4 hours there, man. We have pizza brought in. The gym owner, Jason Miller, who owns Iron Pride, he'll open his other little side room that he has for boxing and personal training. And he'll be like, yeah, I got you some food today. And we'll have like pizza and breakfast pizza. And, we celebrate birthday parties together. And, we go to Lions games in Detroit. Or my friend Matt was like, yeah, I can't make it to one of the games. You want to go? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, well, I got tickets. He's like, these are pretty good. I'll just give them to you. And they're like second row off the actual like end zone. Like,
yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, I'm like, oh my God, Matt, you didn't have to. He's like, yeah, buddy, and it's just like, wow, how lucky am I?
So let's talk about, you just put up your best bench at 43.
Yeah, pretty close, man.
How what did you change? Because, you've trained a long time. Your training has to have progressed over that time. And training at 20 is definitely different than training at 40.
Yeah. I would say I had to basically change my foot placement a lot. So when I used to bench in my early, like I'd say 20s through 30s, we were the whole militia benching, toes behind the hips. It's always been squeezing up on the traps. creating that shelf. Obviously, that's the launching point. But I feel like I never used to use the strap on the top of my back where you have the lower strap and then you put the belt on. And some people just use the strap and no belt. Um, my multiply is a 2-ply chest and a 3-ply arm. I was benching like 900 in this shirt off a board, but it was blacking me out. It was getting pretty scary because I'd get down to like a half board with like 865 and then just be like fall asleep. And I'm like, I'm never going to touch in this. And I was just like, Rudy, this black material is just ridiculous. Like, if people are squatting 2 or 3 ply in this, good for you. Like, this is just, I gave it to a friend named Joe Fargo. It blacked him out. I know a guy named Ryan Marble that's working a friend of his, and he's a really good, well over 800-pound bencher at 220. Obviously, different body type and everything. And, he's having a hell of a time. So I'm like, I'm going to cut the ply out of this. It's too much. And when I cut the ply out of it, I started learning to use the back Velcro on the top of my shoulders differently. Obviously, if I'm going to open up a little bit lighter, I'm going to leave that very loose. Or if I'm having a hard time touching, I'm going to leave that loose. But I've been using the strap more to keep how tight I want the top, because before you would just lay on your back and the shirt would kind of just be loose on your chest. Now it's kind of tight around my shoulders, and I want to keep the shirt where if I can just put my hands out really easy and really like nonchalant, that shirt's not tight enough. I'm just not going to get enough out of it. And I'm not using like the STP or any of these stretchy material shirts. I'm using like a very stiff polyester. It's called the Black Line by Overkill. And in the single ply, I wear a closed back shirt because I want to be able to bench in any federation that uses closed back, instead of just being like, okay, well, it's split up the back, so now I can only do APF. If I want to do USAPL or whatever, USPA, then I'm going to do USPA because I'm obviously not going to be able to do USAPL anymore. But I want to keep that shirt so I can use it for multiple sanctions. But I have found that it wasn't always the tightest chest plate. Like, take the chest plate in. Now, I'm tucking too much and now I can't get down to the bottom. Or I've had to keep my feet more flat to the ground. I've had to work on not being as lean too. So like, I used to be a very lean lifter. I pretty much have abs, and I've had to let my stomach go a little bit to be able to push it up and to be able to drive myself up to create a little bit shorter of a distance because my arms are a little skinnier and longer. So not only did I have to change the whole metal militia basically setup, I had to let my softness go a little bit, not be such a hard, not be as such dense and like bodybuilder-ish. Put my feet, flatten my feet out. I had to learn to push through my toes and not through my heels because I found if I was pushing through my heels, my butt would come off the bench. If I was opening my knees and spreading my knees out as far as I can and pushing through my toes, I would stay perfectly, to the bench. I would get good leg drive. I felt with the metal militia form, I didn't get enough leg drive. I was basically just stapled to the ground. I'd have that nice big arch. I was stapled. I'd basically bring the bar down. Now I've learned not to tuck so hard. I felt before I used to tuck really hard and lift my head up to see where I was touching. Now I kind of gently lift my head up when the shirt's really tight, and I keep my elbows out at first. So basically when I unrack into my lats, my first thing is I basically I'm squeezing the bar as hard as I can, like the breaking the bar where your elbows turn. And then I let the elbows come out, and then I kind of veer down, like I wing down to get to that touch. And then it's not push straight up. For years, I would push straight up and then muscle the weight back. It's more of flaring out and wedging under the bar. Like Clay would always talk about wedge under the bar, and he's like, if you get stuck at the top and you can't lock it out, he's like, let your air out and just settle your shoulders and push through the bench.
Right.
And get that little bit of that lockout. So it didn't look like your elbows were soft. So I think flattening my feet out, pushing through my toes, spreading my legs, getting them out so they're not close to the bench. Because I used to be like feet behind the hips, really close to the bench, almost like hugging the pad, super big arch. And then it was like, that's not working no more. Like I'm getting no leg drive. Like I'd get pop and then I'd be stuck there. And I'm like, what is going on? And then like, I'm not moving. Nothing's changing. And then it was like, all right, now I got to change everything. Put the feet out, bring them out wider. Okay, now this time, don't tuck as hard right off the bat. Set the elbows out first. Pull the chest up into the shirt. Pushing my belly up, trying to push up, pushing up to the bar. Like before, I would just come down and I wouldn't be pushing my belly up. And then so I would had to come so much farther down and like a board out of the stomach, pushing it up to the bar. And like today I had this younger Matt kid who's going to be a great multiply lifter that came over from CrossFit. And his form is great. He's got his feet out. We had to bring his feet back behind his hips just a tad, but his feet are out. We push him through. We get his shoulders locked in. And, he doesn't wear a belt. And so like the collar kind of rides up and we're trying to like maybe put the belt down so the collar doesn't ride. And he's in a metal ace. And, he takes the 485 and he does it pretty easy. And it's like, okay, that's pretty good. Like that was a good bench. And then we tried 505 and it didn't go as well. And we noticed that when you take the bar out, a lot of people take it way out over their stomach, where like I like to take mine out like right about where my sternum, like the top of my stomach is. He was taking his where it looked like it was almost coming to his belly button. Like he was on that fight or flight of it's going to dump. So we're like, let's bring you back a little bit and let's keep you right above your sternum. And then let's bring your elbows out first and then have him tuck. And when he did that, that 485 blew up and he had no problem shooting through it. And I feel like a lot of people, they pop and then they don't feel like they can't lock it out because they're not punching through the lift. And I feel like what Jimmy talks about when I've had to learn is when I'm pressing out, I'm not pressing up. I'm trying to spread the bar out. I'm trying to do that like spread extension. And I've been working that on boards. So and people be like, why are you doing such lightweight with a board? And it's like, because I'm learning to spread the bar and I'm learning to do that extension on my triceps. I'm not just forcing the bar up with my pecs and my shoulders anymore. So I kind of like started all over again like 4 years ago because I couldn't get any leg drive with my feet behind my my butt anymore.
So you think like, so now when you start a younger lifter, you're going to start him using the knowledge that you have now.
Yeah, but a lot of kids like they have to go back to that feet back. I can't just throw a lifter in and say, hey, you're built like me, put your feet down flat and let's do it like this. Because even when I helped my youngest son, Lachlan, we've been experimenting in a shirt with him. We put his feet down and then he pushes so much that he gets good pop, but then his butt automatically comes off the bench. And it's like, okay, we're done there. He's like, yeah, I got it. And I'm like, oh, disqualified lift. And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, your butt came up. So then I put his feet back into my old position and we set everything up. No problem. So it's like, I think everybody's built and you just got to kind of fine tune what, like, are they getting leg drive? That's the big thing. Are they really staying tight? Like, when I'm pushing my knees out and I'm forcing through my toes, you're not moving my legs. If I can take and push on your knees and they move at all, you're obviously not pushing hard enough. And if you're not squeezing your shoulder blades and tucking them in your pockets, you're obviously not getting your chest up high enough. And I just feel like to be in a really, really good equipped bench setup, you're going to be uncomfortable. It's not comfortable. Like, I just feel
I think it gets comfortable at some point, but by comfortable, it's exhausting.
Yes.
Like you're kind of used to it, but you actually, and I tell people this all the time. I go, if your legs are not and your hips are not sore after bench day, you're not doing it right.
Yeah, like if your hip flexors are not killing you, and your back, and then obviously you weren't pushing hard enough. But I agree exactly what you said there, Chad. Like now, to me, I'm sore in the right spots, but it's not hard. But then we had Natalie in today, who was phenomenal bencher. She's like, oh my God, my back's sore. She's like, oh, this is hard. I'm like, you remember this now? And she's like, yeah. She's like, I totally forgot about this. And then in a couple months, she'll never remember that.
Yeah.
It'll be easy because the body will adapt and you'll get used to it again.
Because
And I felt,
I'm more of a feet out. Like I put my feet out in front of me and I'm driving my butt into my shoulders as hard as I can while I'm pulling my shoulders into my butt.
yeah, you're trying to touch them together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's exhausting. But even, and the funny thing is even at my level, there's points where I've had to have people like, Chad, you're not tight enough, dude. And I go, yeah, I am. And then they show me I'm not. Because I mean that goes back to the whole team thing again. Like, we don't actually see ourselves doing it. We may feel it, but we can lose that feel, and we need someone to keep our ass honest.
Yeah, you need to be humbled sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Bob's got a good thing I like about him is he'll never make me feel like I'm doing great. That was a good lift. No, motherfucker, that was great. That was a PR. What are you talking about? It was a good lift. But this is what you change, and you're like, what are you talking about? That was better than anybody here. Like, you start in your mind, like, blah, 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 blah. You start telling yourself, what does he know in this and this? And then you start really thinking about what he's saying. And it wasn't that he was saying it wasn't a great lift and this. He was keeping me humbled and honest because there's things that I'm going to need to do because that's not the next weight. The next weight is going to be 10, 15 pounds.
He's basically saying what I always say. There's always more.
Yes.
Like, you did a good job. It's a great lift, but there's still more. There's still more in you. Like, you haven't achieved what you can achieve.
I think everybody needs that on their team.
Mm-hmm.
I think a team can make and break you because if you got a team that always, oh, that's great. That's a great lift. Oh, that's a great lift. And it's that much high in the squat and your bench is teetering or your soft lockout and you're always using boards and you're not coming off your chest and oh man, no, that flew off that board and that flew and then you get to the meet and then it just totally crumbles. And then where are they at now? Where are they there to teach you now? I had my a good close friend Joe Smolinski and people they hated when he was judging because he did everything by the book. And Joe cost me a lot of money in money meets. But I knew it was the right call. And when I did get lifts in his meets, I knew if it was time to post a video, I knew that no one's going to say that lift was horrible or this or that. And I remember I was at the Arnold and everybody had told me those were 3 perfect lifts. You just lost all that money. You should have won. And there was other lifters that were getting away with lifts from other judges, but Joe had walked off the platform and they switched judges. But my whole flight of group, a bunch of us bombed that shouldn't have bombed. And then I started looking at the video and I started looking at stuff. And it was like, he was right. My butt was coming off.
I never minded. Actually, Gordon Santee was one of my favorite judges because I'm like, dude, if Gordon Santee passes me, I'm not going to question it at all because I know he's a great judge. And I just cared that it was level. If it's a level playing field, I don't care. But I would rather have the judges just be strict. We know if we're pushing the limits or not, and that's our choice.
Yeah, exactly. I would rather them just be consistent.
Yeah.
And I feel, I really feel right now the APF is done a good job. The WPO is doing a good job. I think they had a rough outing with social media the last WPO. I know there was a lot of people upset, and I get it. There was a lot of things that happened. There was a lifter that had basically his neck. He had an issue with his neck, and they had to like take him off the platform, and it stopped the meet for an hour, and that a lot of variables happen. But it's like I feel like the APF is starting to be very consistent. Like it's been a very consistent, and I feel like there's a lot of good lifters. So I feel like where I'm at now, I want to do those meets. Yeah, I will do some local meets because I want my family and my children to see it if they can make it, my kids and like my local friends. But there's no point in me really going to these like local meets just to be like, I'm the coolest guy because I can bench more than everybody. Like, no, like I want to lift against the best of the best that are still there. Like, when we went and we lifted in a WPO, I'm sorry, but Rich and Keith are the best of the best. Keith's benching 955 at 242, and Rich is benching, 1,200 pounds. We were facing the best.
Mm-hmm.
Like, same thing. I got my shirts. I wore them one time, and I had to learn on the fly. And I came one rep shy. So was I upset? Yeah, because I came one rep shy. But it was like, at least I know I went in there, and I give Hunter all the respect in the world. And what's his name, the bench daddy's son, coming there at like 19, 20 years old, going against some of the best in the world and just handling weights. And remember his first attempt, his dad called him on that bench, and he didn't even get one rep, and he was like looking at his dad, and his dad's like, no, you didn't do it the right way. And I just looked at him, and I was just like, man, Womack's that's a real dad, dude. Like, Womack was like, no, you're not going to do this. We're doing it the right way. Like, if you're not going to do it the right way, we're not going to do it. And I mean, if you look at the rest of the kids' lifts, his son, man, he was smoking like 500 and 400, and those reps were perfect. And right when something got a little loose or he started looking, Dad stopped him, and it was like, okay, we're done. And maybe the kid had a couple more in him, but his dad was looking out for his longevity.
Yeah.
And that's what I was like, that's a good man,
And because this sport, a lot of people can't see that this is call it a sport of attrition. Like, it's not going to happen overnight. When you do see somebody come up, like every now and then I'll see these young 20-year-olds and I'm like, holy shit, where'd that kid come from? A year or two later, you don't ever hear from them again. Because they came up too fast. Their ligaments and their tendons and their joints, and nothing could grow as fast as the muscle could. And it really is a sport of longevity. I mean, look at how many guys have put up the biggest numbers in their lives, late 30s to early 40s.
Yeah, it's crazy.
There's a reason for that.
Yeah, and just like the bodybuilders, when you look at bodybuilders, like, when did like Ronnie Coleman really become the best bodybuilder? Late 30s. Jay Cutler, late 30s. Okay, the men's physique's a little bit different. It's a different class, but for these guys to put on that much muscle and the thick and the density, they're in their late 30s, early 40s when they're starting champions. So powerlifting, and you're like, well, bodybuilding and powerlifting are different. Yeah, they are, but they're both, it's a longevity thing. Like, that's why I think like these raw guys, they got to open their minds up to, like, they want to stay in this sport. Like, think about the single ply and multiply. Try it.
I wonder too, and this would be an interesting question for you because you train in so many different styles. Well, first of all, I love all lifting. So to me, it's like drag racing. Like, I can respect a raw guy. I can respect the crazy new bench shirts because it takes a different mentality and personality to get really successful in some of the gear. But I think what happened is, we learned so much in gear. And then the raw thing came on. And I think the raw guys actually learned from some of what we took in gear, and they ran with it. So now they're putting up these crazy raw numbers. And I think at some point they're going to start leveling out, and they're aggressive people. So they're going to be like, maybe I'll throw a pair of briefs on, or maybe I'll throw a shirt on. And then now they're going to have the new knowledge that they built being a raw lifter that's going to come into the gear lifter. So kind of my roundabout question for you is, do you feel like when you're changing from single to double and then back to single or into multi, do you feel like you gain a little knowledge each time you like change gear a little bit?
Yeah, I do. And I'll try not to rumble on with this because it's like, I know I can get off on the tangent and like make up, because it's like single ply, I had to learn to bring the bar down as fast as I possibly could. Like multiply, I felt for the longest time I had to respect the weight and everything had to be inch by inch by inch, everything perfect. But when I got to single ply, I was not moving the bar as fast as I could to get to my chest. And so I borrowed a friend's gym, his shirt, tried it on. It was a little bit bigger. And I got down to my chest in like literally like 3 or 4 seconds, and it blew up. And it was like, and my training partner's like, that's the best bench I've ever seen you do. Like, that's unbelievable. But I'm like, yeah, it's only 645. I'm like, I'm benching 716. Now I got to do that in my competition shirt. And then so today I was like, let's do that again. Let's bring that down a little bit quicker. So I brought it down a little quicker, missed the transition at the top, couldn't come out of it with the 845. But it was like, at that time I was in a way better position to make that lift. I mean, that was going to be like a 10 or 20 pound PR. So I was like, okay, I missed the transition. I'm at the beginning of my training right now for this, so I'm ahead of schedule. Don't worry about it. Then I get in a band shirt, and it's like you're searching, and then it's like, no, just get down to the chest as fast as you can, but control it. So I started pulling that shirt down, and as soon as I learned how to bring my elbows out and pull and push my chest up, everything started clicking, and it was like I took that from single ply to multi-ply, now to the band shirt. Now, obviously, the band shirt's going to be more elbows out. You can still tuck. Like with Rudy's shirts, I really love his band shirts because he cups the end of them so they kind of lock like a poly shirt, and then you can kind of keep your natural groove. Every time I tried to bench in a band shirt, my first band shirt I ever tried, I actually micro tore my pec. It was in the Arnold, and I was doing the last man standing, and I had someone fix a shirt for me, and it blew the stitching out in the arm, and I borrowed a bench daddy from a guy, and I just needed one more lift to win, and I knew I could get it with his shirt, and I had to like really pull my elbows out, and when I came up, I felt it in my pec, and I felt the lump, and I'm like, oh no, did I just tear my pec? And it was like, no, you didn't tear it. Everything's fine. But, obviously 6 months of rehab, and I realized I'm never using these band shirts again. I'm done. Screw these things. I can't keep my elbows out. Like every time I keep my elbows out, I'm having issues with my pec. These guys don't know what they're doing. They're all going to get hurt. I went on that whole, everybody, and then they started changing them, and then the different material. And then Rob came out with the F8, and the F8 just took off. And I still, haven't seen or tried one of his. I've seen him, but I haven't tried one of his shirts. And then Rudy's like, no, just bench how you bench. But he's obviously, you keep your elbows out a little bit, you do this. And it was just so funny because it was like elbows out and then tuck in and then pull and then bam. And then it was like, do it faster. And then I came down faster and it got better. And it was like, I can still lift in these band shirts like I do in my single and multiply. Little bit different, but I think with like equipment, I think speed is pretty much everything, especially in bench shirts. I think people respect the weight too much, and they spend too much time trying to get it to the chest, and they're out there for 8 or 10 seconds and they can't get down fast enough. And they're like, well, what's going wrong? And I try to tell them, well, you got to go faster. And they're like, no, I can't control the weight like that. Then I'm like, then back the weight down. Well, then I'm never going to touch. Then I'm like, then you got to find the happy medium. Back the weight down, drop the boards. With the band shirts, you really don't need the boards. Single ply, they're good to use the overload, but I'm not using a board in a meet. So I tend not to use them as much. Multiply, I do them to kind of gauge my lockout, to see where my lockout strength is and where it's lagging. But it's like, I felt like people in multiply rely on the boards too much. And when I used to train and like talk to Luendo a lot, and I started these last man standing where you had to start like 550 and do a 25-pound jump, and you would make 25-pound jumps. It was like I had to learn to touch 550, but I also had to bench 700 in that same shirt. And then it really taught you how to manipulate like where you really need to be. And like your tattoo, like I love that tattoo on your chest because you know exactly where those lines are and where that chest plate needs to be.
Yeah.
And so much more than just go to the board and come off the board. Go to the board. Like, I mean, posting board benches is cool, and I get it, but it's like they don't do nothing for me. I like seeing benches off the chest. That's the meat, the meat's bench off the chest.
One of the things that used to crack me up too is because we kind of knew where my shirt needed to be. So I'm like, hey, let's just do a 3 board today or a 2 board today, just to cut some of the length of the movement out so I'm not under the pressure, under the weight so long. But I knew guys that would tweak their shirts so they could barely touch the 3 board or barely touch the 2 board. And I'm like, no, I'm going to leave my shirt where I know I could touch. Yeah. Like I'm just using the board to like take some of that duration away.
Yeah, maybe you needed to take some off your shoulders for a week.
Yeah.
You can't touch every single week. You're going to beat your body up. And that's where I feel like the same with you. I'm going to put my shirt up a tad higher and I'm going to use a board, but maybe I'm going to do a double or a triple. but it's because I'm making that lockout harder.
Right.
I'm not trying to make the shirt do all the work. Trust me, and I can manipulate my 2-ply shirt and do 1,005 off a 2-board if I want to and make it barely touch, but it's like, I'm never going to do that to me. That's never going to help me, and if I try to do that, then I'm, stuck at a 2-board and I can't make it. Like today, I learned a very important thing today. I tightened the back of my shirt up because I wanted to get a lot of support because I was doing that 1-board, 845. I decided I'm going to go back down and I'm going to go 755 full range. Well, guess what happened? Locked up at about a board and a half, 2-board. Didn't go anywhere. Right when it locked up, I was like, why didn't I loosen that back strap a little bit to make it easier to touch? So I press out of it and I'm like, okay, I'm done for the day. That was good. But then I thought in my head, like, why didn't I loosen that strap up? That strap was for 845, not 755. And that's where you got to, play with, the back strap. I think that back strap on the top of your back, and I never used it, and I watched Tim Hensley use it, and I watched he'd be like, tighten it here, do this. And I was just like, Tim was just such an amazing bencher at 198. Like he benched like 805 or 820 at like 202 drug free, and like, he was constantly benching 770, 760 at 198. And I would just like, I remember there was times where I was ahead of him and then I got injured and then Tim just blew apart everybody. And then Tim got injured and then I started coming back, and it was just like, we would just pick each other's minds. And I was so against that top back strap. And now it's all changed. I got my feet down. I'm using the top back strap. I'm not using the, most aggressive 4-ply poly shirt, like I can do this in a 2-ply shirt. I don't need this 3-ply chest taken into 5 inches. And like, I do think that some people are kind of, scared of tight gear. And I'm not sure how you felt with tight gear. Did you get it custom, or did you just run stock gear and have it taken in? Or
No, I always ran stock gear, and I did that because when that gear was no longer good, I knew I could get the exact same thing. So I was more like, if I customize this, then I got to learn it. Then I got to recustomize the next one, and I got to learn it again. And if I can just learn how to use the stock gear and manipulate it the way I need to, I know I can always get another shirt and I'm going to be good.
Yeah.
But it is interesting because I think there's too loose and I think there's too tight. And I've seen a lot of guys just try to go tighter. And it's like, I don't think that's the answer. I think it's manipulating the shirt to your needs. And it's not always about, even if somebody benches, they outbench you in 3-ply, well, you learn your 2-ply, you might be able to outbench them.
Oh yeah.
Like there's no guarantee that tighter and more plies are better.
Yeah. I watched Greg Powell outbench everybody in unlimited band shirts in his 1-ply.
Yeah.
He's benching 900, 242. There's guys only benching 750, 855 in a 3 or 4-ply with an insert in their band shirt. And it's like, all right. But then I also talked to Greg, and Greg's wearing a 46. And then I'm like, I wear a 46. And then the thickness and the density of Greg is like, that's like me wearing like a 50. And I'm like, or no, it's like me wearing like a 40. It'd be like me putting my wife's shirt on. And it's just amazing. Like Jimmy Kolb. Like Jimmy Kolb's stock shirts, like chest plates are so ridiculous that people don't understand. Like he was so good at having like the tightest shirts and fitting in it. And so was Womack. If you ever watched Womack, he could fit into the tightest 1-plies. And then I think, because Powell trained with Womack for years, like I remember going to the Olympia and having like a really good meet, getting close to breaking like the world record. And then the next year coming in and then seeing Greg like shatter it by almost like 200 pounds and watching him just rip open a size 46 Evil Twin 1-ply, no warm up, throw it on, and basically like maybe do 1 rep, maybe not, and go right out there and basically bench it. Just right out of the package. Oh, brand new shirt, never wore it, nothing, and just 835 or 855 and being like, can I buy that shirt off you, Greg? Like, that shirt fit me. How are you fitting in that? Like, if you're not going to use it again, like, let me buy that off. And it was just like, he's like, no. And then I've got a couple of shirts off him that I bought for friends. And then, like, I bought a 3-ply Evil Twin off him. And he writes everything in the inside. And there was like 1,100-pound numbers in there, and I'm thinking, Greg's hit 1,100 pounds full range in this shirt, or 1050 or 1039, and just thinking like, and I've tried it on, and I don't video it or mess around because like Rudy and Overkill, like that's all I'm going to wear in competition. Like I'll help people break in shirts and try to show them with their own shirts, like, and play around. But like, I'm very faithful to Rudy and Overkill. Like he has done so much for me. There's no point. Every time I tried to veer off the path and go somewhere else, it never worked. I don't know why. Maybe it was hard-headedness, but I'd come back and be like, sorry, Rudy, like, I'm glad you're making gear again. Can we like continue to work? And he's like, yes, yeah, I'll continue to sponsor you. And like, there'll be times where like, I will just send Rudy money for a shirt. And he's like laughing, like laugh out loud. Why did you send me money? And it's like, because this sport ain't free, dude. Like you're sending out gear to a ton of people. Like you don't have to send me everything for free. You made me 3 band shirts. You sent me a bag. You sent me 2 pairs of wrist wraps. You sent me a belt. You did it all in 3 weeks. He ruined his hands trying to get it. He has carpal tunnel, and he's still having issues with his hands today from the shirts that he made me for the Olympia. And I just sent him money to build me a triple ply of the new gray line. So it's like, I love his shirts. I love that I can talk to him and show him my videos, and he can be like, okay, I need to build you a shirt. We need to change this, or I need to do this and we need to change this, or, okay, where's the shirt at? Where are you? And it's like, that's what I love about having him there, because I think that lifters need to learn the stock point view of it, like you, and like how we all started, but to get like really great and to get where a lot of these people are, I think the customization of the gear is really where it's like going to take it, because even Rob's making custom band shirts for people. I mean, he's making custom band shirts to fit specifically that body type. Because if you think about it, maybe you can wear an extra large and I can wear an extra large. What is that going to help you and me? It's going to be so deathly tight on you, you're going to barely be able to get it down maybe to your chest. I might be able to rep out 700 with it, and it's kind of like,
Well, everybody's built different. People are more barrel chested. People are more wide. People have wider lats. People have bigger triceps. Like,
yeah,
and then even like you brought up earlier, like a lean person to a chubby guy is going to make a big difference. Like I got a big barrel chest and thick torn up chest muscles now. Like that's tissue that's going to fit under there. That's flexible compared to somebody who doesn't have that tissue under there. So yeah, I mean, eventually, if you do want to get better, I think once you, like you said, once you learn how to handle a stock and you learn how to adjust a shirt, then you can start going, hey, well, what if this shirt was this, or what if this chest was this?
Yeah,
and really start tweaking it.
And I think people need to quit rushing. Also, like, okay, I fit in this 48 and I just hit this PR, but now let me try a 46 and and it's like, well, did you pull the tricep down a little bit? Did you pull the neckline down? Did you really get the most out of that shirt? And I think I used to fall into that too. It'd be like, oh, I can go tighter, go tighter, go tighter. And then it was like, man, my fucking forearms are killing me. Like, why can't I push myself off the ground? I've got so much tendonitis. And I'm like looking at these marks around my biceps, and I've got like permanent marks and lines around my deltoid, around my tricep that'll never go away. And I'm like, why is this hurt? Why can't and it was like, well, I got greedy. I just felt that tighter was the best. And then it got to the point where it was like, okay, I'm used to this tightness. I like how this works. This is working great. And then it was like, Rudy's like, well, that's the tightest shirt I'm making right now. He's like, no one wears their shirts this tight. And I'm like, ain't shit. And I'm thinking, what about he's like, well, not everybody benches like that. He's like, maybe, Luendo used to wear a super tight shirt. And then he was like Matt Manuth, and Matt was like, I just hated watching Matt because I was so in awe of him because he was just like, I remember watching him at the Arnold one year, like go in and win the full power. And then I'm going to bench the next morning and, bench for cash meet or the pro bench XBC on the stage. And he's like, yeah, I'm a little sore. And he's like eating McDonald's. And then he goes up and opens with like an 860. And I'm just like, oh my God, he just won the Arnold Pro Bench and the Pro Powerlifting 2 days straight. And it was just like nothing, and I was just like, God, this guy is just ridiculous. I think Matt Manuth is probably another unbelievable bencher and unbelievable lifter that a lot of people don't talk about because that guy, I watched him do things, I remember watching his YouTube videos and he was benching 900 in a shirt like 10, 15 years ago, when like that was like the big number. And there was another guy from Iowa that was an overkill lifter. His name was Jake. And, he was a 220, 242 guy, triple ply, benching 900 pounds. Jake Prezick. Jake Prezick was, impressive, well over 500-pound raw bencher. And then you get him in a meet and he would bench like 900 pounds at 42. And it was like, okay, like my first thing was like, I want to beat the West Side guys. If I can beat them. And then it was like, okay, I need to beat the big iron guys. And it was like, well, I'm never going to beat Frankel because no one's going to ever beat Frankel. And then it was like, I can't beat Jason Coker because no one's going to beat Jason Coker. And it'd be like, I remember weighing in and standing next to these guys and they're all like, they're shorter guys. And like Louie'd be like, what are you competing at? And I'd be like, 220. He'd be like, you need to be 275. Like, what's going on with you? Like, you're too skinny. And I was like, oh, it'd make me so mad. And I'd be like, I'm going to show you, Louie. I'm going to show, whoever I'm competing against at this SPF meet, and I'd get in that zone, man, and I'd get out there. And Louie would just love it. And I remember him sitting there at those SPF meets at like Laura's gym and stuff. I did a bunch of her cash meets and just being like in that zone and then get all the way there and I'm going to win. And then Dave Hoff, like, missed 2 lifts, comes back with like a 980, like, oh, there's the cash. Like, God, I was that close. Next year, boom, there's Brandon Lilly. There's the cash. And like taking second place 2 years in a row. But it's all right. I beat the West Side's 220 and 240 pound lifters, so I felt good. And then it was just like, I'm not going to beat Coker. I'm not going to beat Franco. So what am I going to do? I'm just going to be the most consistent and try to stay in this as long as I can. Mm-hmm. And now I see Frankel at meets, and he still looks super impressive. And I see Coker still benching, and I'm just thinking, oh, God, please don't let him put his shirt on again because he's going to kill everybody. It's just like those guys have, like, they just have that it factor. Like, when they talk about sports and guys with the it factor, like, Frankel decides to come out and bench in a bench shirt if he ever wanted to or get back into powerlifting and be in multiply. If he really put his heart into it, I don't think people would be able to beat him. I think he could get pretty close to probably where he was, especially with the gear that everything is dialed in now.
Well, I think there's all kinds of different levels of people. And I think if you have average genetics, you can become a state lifter. You can probably go to some world competitions, maybe some national competitions. I said that backwards, but, and then there's the guys that have like good genetics and they use their genetics and they become pretty good. And then there's the guys like those guys and Ed Cohn who are like, no, they have the knowledge, they have the discipline, they have the genetics, they have the build. Like they have it all. And It's like those guys are legends. They're legends in the sport.
Yeah, and they're always going to be like, Frankel's.
Yeah, you could put them in any situation. I guarantee if Raw would have been popular when I was lifting, all those guys would have been Raw and they still would have been the best lifters.
Yeah, and I think that the Raw guys don't see that. But when I started out Raw, I benched, I think, 365 at 181 drug-free when I was 20 years old. And that was beating the equipped lifters. I still hold the drug-free record for my state, which everything else has been beat in 99 at 365 at 181. And no one's beat it with a band shirt. No one's beat it with any type. And so hopefully somebody comes along and beats that AAPF junior record. But it was like, if you didn't wear gear, you weren't competitive.
Mm-hmm.
There was no raw. Like when I went to an APF meet, you didn't have the raw category. You had open, junior, masters. You had your classes and your weight classes. So you couldn't go in and be competitive in the meets that we used to do and be raw unless you were just going for yourself and you want to beat numbers.
Nobody even knew what raw was.
Yeah.
Like the bottom of the level, the lowest level of gear was still single ply.
Yeah, it was Inzer Z suit.
Yeah.
Yep, and marathon knee wraps.
Like that, if you said raw, that's what people thought. Oh, you're single ply. Like
Yeah.
there was no technical raw lifting.
No, there was no sleeves. There was no raw with sleeves, no classic raw. There was nothing. So like, if there would have been raw, you probably would have had all those multiply guys raw, and they would have still been on top.
Mm-hmm.
Still would have been the best. It's just that's just not what the time was. So like when the raw to equip, it's two different. It's two different like differences. I mean, it's just we can't say that if Dave Hoff didn't train raw his whole life that he wasn't going to be the best raw now, because, and I can't say say like Sam Hunt, who's an unbelievable raw lifter, if he started training multiply at the beginning, he would have Dave Hoff numbers now. We don't know that.
Yeah,
I mean,
we don't know that. And it's the same thing. Like when people had asked me, what's your raw bench? I'm like, I bench raw maybe once a year.
Yeah.
And I go, I've repped 500 for I don't know how many. I've done 600 raw. Like, and that was not even training it. What would I have done if I trained it?
Exactly. That was just warming up to get in the shirt.
Yeah, I didn't care. And every now and then, once a year or so, I'd be like, let's go raw today. Oh, 585. All right, let me put my shirt and start training now. Like that was just like part of my warm up.
Yeah, that was it. And I just think that there's not really like an argument, because I mean we have that. If you weren't in the game, if you weren't playing multiply, there was no other game about it. It was like, I remember me and my best friend Chris got in our second meet. It was at the APF. It was the Wolverine Open. I think it was one of the first or second Wolverine Opens. And I was a junior. My best friend Chris, who was a great lifter, he was a teenager. Matt Kroc was competing. I think he was a junior. He probably was still a junior. Yeah. I think he was 23, getting ready to be in the Open. There was Tom Skyver, Greg Gallo, Clay Brandenburg, and John Zeman, all in that meet. And we go there and we're warming up and we're watching everybody else. And there's a lot of great state and national record holders there too. But, obviously Clay and Zeman and Skyver and Gallo and Kroc, they all stood out. They were the elite of the elite. And you knew, because they didn't have to say it. You just knew when you saw them warming up. And we're like, he's got knee wraps on. Like, man, I wish I had some fucking knee wraps. Like, what's that white diaper? Like, what's that fucking suit he's wearing? Like, is that canvas? Oh my God. I'm like, I got an Asics wrestling singlet that I've had since 4th, 5th grade that I think is tight that I'm using it, like, and I'm like, a ski suit. I'm like, what is that? I'm like, try to put it on. I'm like, oh my balls. Like, what's going on with this thing? This hurts. Like, you guys wear this and this is good. I'm like, watching him try to pull this equipment off him. And I'm like, Chris, we need to get some of this equipment, dude. Like, look at these numbers. Because you would watch him warm up. And it was like, I just benched more than that guy. Like, my last warm up was more than his warm up. And you're like putting stuff together because you're realizing like these dudes are getting a lot out of this equipment because they know how to use it. And then you think, oh, I'm going to get this extra high performance heavy duty bench shirt. I'm going to throw it on. I'm going to bench 500 pounds. And you put it on and it gives you 10%. And you're like, it only gave me 15 pounds and it's harder than benching raw, And then you put the knee wraps on and you don't know how to use knee wraps yet. and you're not pushing in them the right way, and you're like, these really hurt. Like, this is not even right. Like, I'm not getting anything out of it. And then you put the suit on, and you're like, wow, I gotta sit back, like throwing you forward, and you're like leaning over, and you're like, I'm never gonna hit depth in this damn thing. Like, what am I gonna do?
The first time I bought a bench shirt and put it on, like halfway through my training session, I'm like, this is stupid. Take this thing off of me. The first time I put a squat suit on, I almost killed myself because I let it throw me forward. Like, I had no idea what it was about.
I shot out of a monolith so fast one time. They called me Rocket Man, man. I was like, lucky they caught it. I fell. Everybody's looking at me, and I'm like, public gym, and everybody, did you see that? And I'm just like, I get up, and I'm like all like mummified, trying to walk back. They're like, yeah, sit back. Like, you gotta sit back. Like, and I'm like all high barring it, I'm not like, and I'm just like, okay, I need to take steps back. And then, I'm like, I'm just going to train raw. And then I go to the next meet, and it's like, no, dude, I got to use this gear, and then it was like, I get my first denim shirt, and I remember I was doing a raw meet, and I had this denim shirt, and Chip Tallman, Matt Kroc was throwing it. So Janae Kroc was throwing the meet in Howell at the high school right next to my high school in Brighton. It was Brighton and Howell. And it was a raw meet, and there was a couple guys from my gym that were doing it, that were bodybuilders, that were talking about how they're going to beat everybody raw. And so my powerlifting team's like, you got to go against them. You got a chance to beat them. You got to represent, like, got to fucking represent us. Like, don't let them bodybuilders beat us. So I'm like, okay, I'll do it raw. And I get there, and the guys don't show up. And I'm like, there's no one lifting raw. It's basically, it was a money meet. So Croc's like, well, it's a money meet. I don't have anyone. There's no money. Like, you automatically win. And he's like, what do you want to do? And I was like, I'll bench in a shirt. I'm like, I brought a shirt. And so they're like, all right, cool. Like, he throws me in the, the open. So I get in there, and I'm benching, and I've got my extra high performance heavy duty on, and I'm like trying to take the weight out. This is when like Rage X's were out. So I'm like behind the time now. I'm like, who's this weird dude with this closed back extra high performance when they've got Rage X, they've got, denim was kind of out at that point. Metal Aces, the first black metal shirts that were coming out that you had. Like, there wasn't no SDP yet. It was like, the big thing was the Titan F6. It was the Rage X, and I remember one of the metal shirts was really big at the time. And Chip Tallman goes, what are you doing? And I'm like, oh, hey, Chip, because we used to lift together. And he's like, what is that? And I said, that's my bench shirt. He said, that's your bench shirt? He goes, no. He's like, you got another bench shirt? And I'm like, yeah, I got a denim. Well, they already learned the whole open back, pull the denim collar down.
Mm-hmm.
I put my denim on. It's a closed back denim with Velcro. I got it strapped all the way up, and I'm sitting here like this. And he's like, no, you got to like tuck your feet back. And he's like, no. He's like, just go out there and lift in your extra high performance. I'm like, I'll just take it off. I'll lift raw. I went out there. I benched like 405 raw at 198. Like, everybody was like, wow, that's really good. And Chip goes, if you come in on Sunday, meet Bob and I, Sunday, 9 o'clock, Total Fitness Center. It was Howell Fitness back then. He's like, I'll have you bench 500 pounds in that denim shirt. And I'm thinking, yeah, right, buddy. You ain't that good. I smoked you for years. And then like, I'm thinking, Chip, I used to beat him. You're older than me. I'm younger. I'm better. I was a better bencher. I go there, and Chip's handling 700 pounds now. And I'm like, oh shit, tables have turned. Like, I'm thinking and walking in, like, I'm the strongest guy in the gym. I'm the best bencher. I'm not. I'm nobody right now. There's another guy that's training, and he's benching in the mid fives. He's lifting equip. Shorter, 181-pound guy. I remember his name was Jamie. He was a state police officer. And he's blowing 500 off this board. And I'm like, he's stronger than me. And I'm looking at Bob, and I'm like, Bob, I'm stronger than you. And Bob's benching like fives. And I'm like, you're all stronger than me. I'm like, what happened? And they're like, give me that denim. So Chip takes the denim. He's like, give me a pair of scissors. I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, just shut up. And he cuts the back. he's ruined my fucking shirt. I'm like, what is going on here? And he's like, no, listen. He's like, you got to wear this shirt open back. And he's like, let's change your form. He puts me in the metal militia form, toes back, squeeze the shoulder blades, everything. Pulls that denim way under. So I got a real big scoop neck. So it's all on that neck. And he's like, okay, you're going to tuck your arms. You're going to do this. I do like 455. It locks up. I blast it up. And I was like, that's like a 50-pound PR. Like, first time in it, I'm like, this is awesome. I'm hooked right then. Like, no matter what, I think denims are the best thing in the world. Like, I'm ready to go brag to everybody that I'm a 455-pound bencher. They do their set. There's 500 on the bar. He's like, okay, get ready. I'm like, I'm not benching 500. And he's like, are you scared? I said, no, I'm not scared, but I'm not stupid either. I'm like, I'm gonna blow my pec off. And he's like, no, you're not. Do the same thing you did last time. Pulls the shirt, puts the belt on. You know, I get it down, and I'm fighting, and it pops up, and he's like, push back. And they're all yelling, back, 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 back. And I'm like, why are they yelling back so much? You know, I'm thinking, like, why are they yelling at me so much? And I'm just drifting a bar, and I lock it out, and I get up, and I'm just on cloud nine, man. And I'm like, I'll be here every single Sunday. And from every Sunday on, I never stop. Mm-hmm. And that right then, that meet, when those Rage X's came out, he called Brad Heck. He was sponsored by Inzer. Brad was a big iron lifter, and so was Chip. So Chip would send one of his or two of his shirts to Big Iron, and they would send me their shirts back, so I would have a Rage X. And it went from like 500 to 545. Then it was like 600. And like at 2008, I was benching like 600 at 198. And then I was just like, that was my life. Like I was like, everything is powerlifting now. I remember I had to take a forced retirement from Ford, and I got hired by a supplement company to travel and do supplement demos and train. And it was like, even my relationships mattered about training. If I felt like if I was going to be in a relationship and it was going to take away time to going in the gym or being the best lifter I could at that time, I wouldn't be in that relationship. Like, I had to be with someone that was fine with everything that I was doing. And if I felt like they weren't, I don't have time for that. And I look at it and I was like, man, I was so selfish back then. So selfish. And I just thought, like, I had two young children, and I was just like not wanting to fail and just being like, man, my kids are going to think I'm the strongest motherfucker they've ever walked this earth. They're going to. And when I got older and they got older, you know what? I didn't care.
It didn't matter.
It didn't matter. But back then, from what I thought, the mentality was, this is what I'm going to stick to, and I'm going to be the best at this, and my kids are going to love this. And in the end, they just love to spend time and have fun with me, and they thought it was cool. Mm-hmm. You know, Arnold, he thought it was the greatest thing, and Jaden, you know, he could have cared less. You know, and they love the gym and they love working out. And I love that my son Lachlan tells me that he's stronger than all the kids on his basketball team, and how he deadlifts more and he benches more. And I think about it was like, I don't want to tell him, like, I don't care about that. I'm just happy that you're happy. But then I remember me being younger and being like, I wanted to be that, you know? So it was just like, God, I thought all these things that I really thought mattered, and it really didn't. And I was a very selfish person for a very long time. Like, it was lifting or nothing. Like, if you got in the way, I pushed you out of the way. I even remember there was times where I wouldn't take certain jobs because I couldn't train on a Sunday. I would tell the job, if I can't make it on Sunday to bench, I can't take this job. And they were like, what? I'm like, I'll work my hardest. I'll do everything I can. I'll work many hours as I can. But I got to be at the gym at these times. What are my hours? And then people were like, you're fucking crazy. And it was like, no, I'm not. Like, this is my goal.
You know what's interesting about that is our stories are very similar. I left a good county job because they didn't want to give me time off for a meet. And like, I ended up working at Southern Wine and Spirits for a long time because when I went back there, I made the deal. I can never miss training. I always need time off for meets, and they always kept with that. Oh. And, I mean, there was a period of almost 10 years where I didn't date because I'm like, it's not going to be fair. I go, no girl is going to be more important than lifting right now in my life.
Yeah.
And I look back, I think you need some of that if you want to be one of the best in the world. But I think there's times where you advance and things change. Where I'm curious right now, like you're putting up better numbers than you ever have. Do you lift as often as you used to lift?
No, I used to just beat the shit out of myself. I used to do so much volume. Oh my God. I was ridiculous. Because back then, if you think, we didn't have the programs we have now. We didn't have everybody reinventing the wheel and changing everything and percentages and all that. It was like you had your core group of guys and you learned from what they learned. And then, hey, this movement, is this really helping me? Like, I remember I was like the biggest dip machine master there ever was. Like, I would do like 100, I would do like 100 dips and like as like a burnout set. And I remember when I was probably like 18 years old, when I was really pushing, like that was when I would say 18, it was like lifting's everything. No more high school sports, senior year, like basically told football coaches, wrestling, basketball, don't ask me to try out for anything. I'm not. I'm done. Powerlifting, weightlifting, bench pressing this is what I'm going to do. Don't ask me. And I remember my mom bought me a membership. All my friends were getting into drugs. It was a really bad time for like that era. It was probably 97, 98. It was like everybody was getting really bad into drugs. And I was like, I just want to stay out of drugs because I was watching close people that I lived by going to jail, robbing people, just getting in all sorts of trouble. And I was just like, these are all the people I hung out with and was friends with. And it was like, Mom, I really love doing this. And she's like, if you want a membership for your birthday, we'll get you a membership. And so like every day I'd go to the gym. And guess who are always at the gym? Police officers. Police officers are always working out. I met a couple local police officers that were power lifters. Met a couple other guys that were power lifters. Met John Ketchum, who was competitor, knew the West Side. Met Bob. Met Jamie Caparoso, who was really big into powerlifting. So then I had all these guys that are 10, 20, 30 years older than me. All my best friends were old men. Everybody'd be like, "Why are you hanging out with those old guys?" Those are my boys. That's my crew. That's my guys. They would take me to the meets. They would drive me everywhere. They would always make sure that I wasn't getting in trouble. They'd be like, "All right, you come to the gym. We got to be at the gym at this time. Meet you there." And it was like, I would battle them in the gym. And I remember my friend John Camaletti, we would bet. I worked at the gym too. We would bet lunch on what exercises that I could do and pull off. And there was one where he was like, I bet you can't dip 100-pound dumbbell for 25 reps. And so I put a dumbbell around my waist with the chain and everything. And he watched and he made sure I did full nine, whatever it was, like basically 90 degree or whatever the angle was. I can't remember, and I did like 18 and a half. And he's like, "All right, go to Great China and give me my lunch." And then it was like, next week, it was like, "I bet you can press those 100-pound dumbbells for 15." And it'd be like, I got 16, I'd be like, "Yeah, go get my orange chicken, old man." And like, that was what we do. And it would be like, "I bet you can't pull 405 for 20 reps, And obviously he knew I couldn't. And he knew that I wasn't going to back down. And I'd be like, I'd get 12. And then like, I would go and I'd be like, okay, he's going to ask me this same question in a couple weeks from now. And so I would talk to Ketchum. I'd be like, "Ketchum, how do I work on my deadlift? I need to get my deadlift up so I can beat John." And he'd be like, he's like, "You got to do good mornings. You got to do pull throughs." And so then it was like, here comes the steps, the powerlifting steps to get better. And then it was like, aha, I did 405 for 25 reps, John. Buy me lunch. And then it was like, before I had them, I would go in, I would bench heavy up to like heavy 5 rep. Then I'd go over to the incline, max out on the incline, run back over, go up to the heaviest dumbbell in the gym, flat press those for as many reps as I could, 3, 4 sets. Everything was 3, 4 sets back then, 4 sets. Nothing was 5. 9 sets of 2. Nothing was dynamic. Nothing was, max effort. Nothing was go over, grab the heavier dumbbells, do inclines, do dips, run over, do declines. I'd be like 35, reps deep into a chest workout.
Mm-hmm.
Just chest. And then it'd be the next day, I'd come back in and it'd be like squat, leg press, hack squat, straight leg deadlift, leg curl, leg extension. And then the next day would be just back. Deadlifts, pull downs, chin ups, one arm, seated row, all the hammer strength row machines, did every one of them. I overtrained so bad. But you know what happened? I got stronger than everybody else.
Well, I think when you start out, when you first start out, because I trained like a madman in my basement when I was a kid. And I think that does build really good ligament and tendon strength. And it just builds you a base, and it builds you that mental capacity to take everything.
Yeah.
But like, I know for me, one of the biggest things I did, and I have horrible sleep, so my recovery is god awful. I was not training anywhere near as much as anyone else was, but I was way stronger than everyone else. And people did not like hearing that. And I remember George Halbert was one of the first guys I heard. He goes, as you get stronger, you're not going to be able to train as much. You get stronger, you train less, and you need more recovery. And so I kind of took that to heart. And even now, I wonder if that's not how a lot of these new guys are putting up these huge raw numbers, is they're not beating the shit out of themselves anymore.
Oh man, they're doing it right, because they've got the best coaches, they've got the best supplements, they've got everybody there to make sure that they're doing it right. Where us, there was nothing. You learn from the guy ahead of you. The strongest guy is where everybody went. And then it was like, I got Powerlifting USA. Like George Halbert was the greatest thing in sliced bread to me. Like when I met George Halbert at a APF seniors or APF nationals meet here in Michigan, like I was like shaking to go shake his hand, because I had read every single thing he did. I watched every video he did. I watched all of his YouTube stuff. It was like, George Halbert is who I wanted to be. It was like him, Dave Waterman. I thought Dave Waterman was like the greatest guy ever. Kenny Patterson. I loved watching Kenny Patterson. Joe Mazza. Like I Joe Mazza now. Joe was the guy that was the best raw bencher, the best single ply, and the best multi-ply. Had all the records in one. It was just like amazing.
So what do you do for work now? I know you work a lot.
Yeah, I do. So when I left Ford, I got very lucky to be sponsored, because there was a supplement company that wanted to sponsor someone in like powerlifting. And even though I was still mostly just doing strongman and bench only competitions, I wasn't technically powerlifting, but I did really good at a bench for cash. And they're like, you're decent looking, you can talk in a crowd, let's take you to this PEC vitamin shop. Basically, it was like a training seminar for the weekend. So Vitamin Shop holds this, what they call I think it's called the PEC, and they bring all their managers, they bring all the supplement companies, and they do a little mini expo. And you explain the products to the managers get samples. It's a weekend long thing, and then you're done. So I went out there, all the managers loved me, and so that became my job. I would travel and go and do Vitamin Shop demos. So I lived on the road for like 4 years. So people were like, well, how are you sponsored? And you're not that strong. And why did you get sponsored in this? And it was like, because I worked my ass off. I lived in hotels. I drove across country. I drove to 40 something different states. And I went to every single Vitamin Shop, and I did demos 3 hours, and I do 3 a day, and then travel to the next, so it wasn't like my sponsorship was solely because I was a decent lifter. It was because I could put everything together. I could talk, I could do expos, I could do this, I could travel on the road. My kids were very young at the time, so I didn't have to really worry about, they had sports or that. So I did that for 5 years. When the kids got older, I started working for GNC. I was running my own security company, and I was personal training, and I was working for the gym. So I was like doing a little bit of everything because my life was powerlifting. I couldn't take a normal job. It didn't work. Personal training, I made my hours up.
Mm-hmm.
I bounced at the bar Thursday, Friday, Saturday night. I could make it in the gym in the morning on Sunday. After I got done Sunday, I'd go to my GNC store and work my couple days. Everything, everything was planned around training. Then I got to a point where I was getting injured all the time, and then I started realizing like I need to make more money. Like this is paying me okay, but it's like I've got 2 kids. They're going to get older to go to school, high school, college. I need to really start thinking about retirement. I'm getting into my mid 30s, going into 40s. So a friend of mine's like, why don't you come and sell cars? And I'm like, yeah, right. I'm not selling cars. Like, get out of here. I don't sell cars. I'm like, I worked at the plant. Like, I worked on the line. I was a repairman. I helped out with team leading. I helped out with doing like, I just grind, I'm like, I can't sit behind a desk and do all that. And they're like, no, man, you're good at talking. People like you. I think you do really good. So I started selling cars for Chrysler. And it was like, I was doing okay, but I was still working another job. But they were allowing me to leave once in a while to compete. And I was sponsored by MHP now. And I could go to the Olympia and I could go to the Arnold and LA Fit Expo. And they'd let me do my competition. So the competition started getting less because I was doing like 9 or 10 a year when like, the 2010, 12, right around that era. And then it was like, okay, now I need to focus on like 2 or 3, dial the training down. Like you said, I'm getting stronger. I need to do less. I need to stop being injured. I've got to worry about my job. I can't go in there with a torn labrum. I can't blow my knee out and go and try to sell cars and walk the lot. So it was like, now I've got to kind of put powerlifting on the back burner. Everything was what I wanted to do. I was very happy. I got to do everything. I got to travel. I got to meet everybody I ever wanted to meet. I got to do all the things that I wanted to. And now it was like, no, I need to take care of my family. Kids are older. So selling cars, it was kind of a disaster at first. I wasn't really doing good. I wasn't selling enough cars, and I was working a personal training job, and I was training a lot of clients, and I was burning myself out pretty bad. I basically would only do like 1 or 2 meets. Still doing good. I was still in the top 5, but it was like I knew it could be better. But it was like I love powerlifting, and I loved it so much. I was like, if I can still be top 5 in powerlifting USA or open powerlifting or whatever it is, I can still compete. I can still do this because I can't stop. It was everything I did. It was what I knew. It was what I loved. It was like, what am I going to do? Be a car salesman and go sit at the bar and drink beer and like become a drunk? And like, no, I can't do that. That's not me. And then it was like, I got to a point where it was like, I started going out and I started drinking. And it was like, okay, I need to dial this back because that lifestyle starts taking over. The guy who thinks it's never going to happen to me, don't drink for 15 years, and now is starting to drink 1 day a week. Now it's 2 days a week. Now it's 3 days because now I'm going to lunch with people, and I'm meeting people from all aspects of life, and I'm meeting, people who have money, and that's what they do for fun. And they're like, hey, you just sold me a car. Come and meet me out. And let's have lunch. And okay, I just sold you a car, and I want to meet you and your friends, and that's how you network and you build relationships, and you got to have referral businesses. And now they're buying me a drink, and 1 drink turns into 6, and I'm like, got to walk home. I'm like, oh, I got to find an Uber. And I'm like, what am I doing here? Like now lifting is like, I'm going to the gym and I'm not having fun training clients. It's a job. I'm not teaching, like I've got my clients and I love them and they're great and they learn so much and they basically kept me stable to not fall down that alcoholic path because I was going there. Like my real father is an alcoholic. We don't speak because alcohol took over his life. Powerlifting, weightlifting, benching took my life.
Yeah.
So I went to lifting, and that's what saved me because I have that addictive personality. As much as my mom tells me I don't, I really do. And so I decided I was like, I got to stop. Started getting back into the gym. I got a good position at Ford where it opened up and they were like, hey, You can come over here. You can sell used. You can do new. You can do your competing. We love it. We'll promote. We'll help you out. Anything you need. John Cuter from Brighton Ford, great guy, came in, asked me how much money I was making. He's like, "You're going to make double that." And I was just like, in my head, like, no way. Like, no. He's like, "You're such a better salesman than than you even realize." He's like, "I'm going to put you with the right people." He's like, "Anything you need, if you need an assistant." And I was just like, why is this guy being so nice to me? Like, salesmen are a dime a dozen, man. They come and go. I watched 15 salesmen come in 3 years at Chrysler over at the place up there. And I loved where I was at. My friend's dad owned it. I went to school with him. He was great to me. We had a great relationship, but it was just, I wasn't selling enough cars. I was making 45 grand and I'm maybe making 25 grand. And okay, but I got child support and I've got to pay all my bills and I've got to think about Jaden going to college and he's got to get a first car. And it's like, no, this ain't going to work. Like I've got to make, a certain amount of money to make sure that my kids have everything they need and for me to live the lifestyle. Cause I don't need a big lifestyle. I don't need to live in $1 million house or have all these nice things. Like I was pretty simple, man. I lived in a condo by myself. I just wanted to go to the gym. I want my gym membership. I want to be able to drive to a meet. Like it wasn't like I needed to make $250,000, $300,000 or be a millionaire. I never tried to do the YouTube thing. I like posting videos and things like that, but it wasn't like I was trying to make it and be a social influencer. So it was like, if I can do this job and do everything that he says and make this much money, like I can start really lifting like how I want to again. Got the job. The first year, my general sales manager, Dom, I have to call him Dom. He was like, "You're going to make this much money." And I was like, if I make this much money, I'm going to start really pushing it back to break some PRs. I'm like, I'm going to go after that 700 single ply. And I'm like, I'm going to look at that 800 number again. Cause I thought it was done. I was done. I was benching like 675, 666, 685. 700 was long gone. It was like, and that was multiply. Like I was messing with 3-ply shirts thinking, man, I can't even hit 700 off with a multiply shirt, triple ply. I'm like, I'm going to retire. My first year, I hit the number he said plus like 20 grand more. And then I told all my clients, I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm working 6 days a week, 10, 12 hours a day. I've got 1 day to do this. This is on Sunday. So I can't train you on Sunday. I'm working Monday through Saturday with 1 day off during the week. So I stopped all my clients. I met my wife 1 year into it. My second year was probably the best year I ever had in car sales. And then getting into the third year, I had even a better year. I got married, had my dog Honcho. My kids are doing great. My son he's been in the National Guard. He's in college studying criminal justice. He's in working a full-time job, like work ethic through the roof, better than any I could ever imagine. My younger son, Lachlan, plays basketball, baseball, football, every sport, great student. And I'm like, oh my God, all this is coming together. And that's when I knew, like, I'm going to start training. Got in touch with Bob again because I was still hit or miss. And I kind of told him, I'm like, hey, like, I really want to go for that 700-pound single ply and 800-pound bench. And when I started working at Brighton Ford, and like the family that is, it's a family dealership. It's still not like a corporate. Like my coworkers are like, Mr. 800-pound bencher, or like say that, or well, not all of us can bench 800 pounds and lift cars, and it's just like everybody is like super nice, everybody's super helpful. Like I'm learning so much about like selling cars. It totally turned my whole brain away from like what a car salesman is like, I don't have to be that stigma. I can be me and be as nice as I want to. And like, I've got a great referral base now. I've got people that reach out. I sell cars all over the United States. I ship them to different, states. And it's just like, finally, like I struggled so many years from like 2008 all the way until probably like 5 years ago. Cause I was married and it was like, she's a nice person and she was a good person. but she wasn't good for me and I wasn't good for her. And she wanted me to retire from powerlifting. And so like I told myself I was retiring, and I thought I was cool and made a big announcement. Like, I'm retiring from powerlifting. Like, people really cared. And I was like, fuck, stupid. Like, what am I? Told Rudy I wasn't lifting anymore. And he was like, you'll be back. And I was like, in my head, I was like, yeah, I will. I'm like, got married, worst 10 months, got divorced. Like, basically could have almost annulled my marriage. Right when I got divorced, it was on. I did not turn back. I flipped the switch, went back to my kids, my job, powerlifting. That was the number one thing. The boys mean more than everything. My job keeps the boys where they need to be. Powerlifting, I only need 3 days a week to do what I really need to do. I knew what I need. I was never going to be the best squatter and deadlifter. So yes, I'm still going to train that as hard as I can. But to be the bench presser, I needed 3 training days no matter what, because I got to have one for my lighter days and my technique and speed and rehab stuff that I like to do. One for my back workout, because I feel like you got to train your back heavier than you got to put in the back work. And then I had to have my shirt work with my team. So the funny thing is I was training. There was no more gyms. My gym was sold and it never reopened. I end up benching like 700 pounds again. And guess where I was training? Planet Fitness.
That's
Never,
awesome.
I never more than a 75-pound dumbbell. I never benched more than 4 plates on the Smith machine. And I would do my 1 day with Bob and the Iron Pride crew. So, what's really funny is, like you said, everything backed down. I wasn't in the hardcore environment anymore. So I didn't need to do the 150-pound dumbbell presses. I was doing 75-pound dumbbell presses. And I was learning how to manipulate how they felt and what I needed to do, and work on form and work on truly doing rehab that I truly needed to do, because I just beat my body up and didn't work on anything, didn't try to fix anything, just tried to kill myself.
Do you feel like, I'm a huge proponent of what I call the Bermuda Triangle, because everybody sucks with their middle upper back. And I have a lot of people, I'm like, I strip them down. They're like, I could row 315. I go, you cannot row 315 correctly. I go, I would rather see you do 135 and do it right. And then we'll build strength doing it right.
Yes.
Do you think having training in that gym helped you to go, okay, well, I don't have a whole lot of weight, but I need a lot of intent then. Like, I need to do the correct movements.
Yes. Like, started doing 1-arm presses, Then I wouldn't be beat up when I got to my shirt work.
Mm-hmm.
Not dips with weights. Okay, instead of just ripping out a bunch of pull-ups, now I'll do assisted weight. I'll start with maybe 50, 60 pounds assisted weight, doing perfect form, making sure I'm working the correct muscles, not just muscling it up, and then slowly adjusting the weight so that everything is perfect. Now I've got mobility back in my shoulder. Now I've got my elbows, my tendonitis is gone. Like, I'm not tearing my pec or having these micro tears or these issues, every other month. And it was just like, okay, there's a lot going on here. Like, what is really going on? Like, and then starting to slowly see the picture of God, what if I would have did this 10 years different? 10 years ago, what if I would have trained like this? What if I would have programmed the correct way, or just maybe not as did many sets, or, this week feels good, I need to shut it down. Nah, throw another plate on each side. God, I mean, but then it also was like, if I never went through that part of my life, would I just hit this PR now?
I think I look at it as a transition where, like, I think when you're younger, you do need to kind of beat the crap out of yourself. You do need to overtrain. And then, but when I look at lifting in terms of like a beginner who's not very strong to the best in the world, there's this intermediate point. And I see a lot of people get stuck at that. Like, yeah, they're a decent lifter, but they're not like world-class lifter.
Yes.
And I think that's where that transition needs to happen, where it's like, okay, like I've been muscleness, I've been beating the crap out of myself. I'm strong enough now that I really need to start paying attention. I need to get back to working my mobility and flexibility. I need to get back to intent. Am I performing the exercise correctly is more important than how much weight am I doing. Listening to your body, auto-regulation. You don't need, you're training heavy once a week, basically. And even then, it sounds like you're still really auto-regulating. Like, is this a good day? Is this a bad day? What do I really need to do today? And I think that's the part where so many lifters get stuck and they plateau because they're like, oh, I beat the crap out of myself to get here. I need to beat myself up more. And I actually kind of did that in my own career too. There's a point where I thought I was going to break the all-time total. And I'm like, oh, I just got to train a little harder when what I needed to do was just back off a little more.
Yeah, that's the hardest part. Backing off. And like today I did the back off. Like at 8:45, that was what I wanted to do. I had the number in my head. I knew I was there. Everything in the warm-ups went good. Everything was fine. Everything moved. Like I did a 795 off a 2-board, and it felt like nothing. Everything moved as fast. And I was like, today, missed the transition. I was like, okay, I'm all right. And then I was like, let's do 775. And then I was like, that's the old Jeff. Like, no, 5. Did the 755. Strap was too tight. Couldn't get it to touch. Pressed out of it. But when I got done, I wasn't dead. Like the shoulder wasn't like, oh man, what did I do? Or that tricep, I go over and I start doing all my like reverse grip benching and doing my lat work and like that middle of the back and like doing trap rear delt, getting all that stuff and feeling how that, and it's like, okay, I feel so much better doing this, where if I would have did that 775 and tweaked something, I wouldn't have been able to do any of this. And now I'm going backwards. It's like, I felt like I was making myself go backwards more than I probably should have been. All right, stop here and let it go. And then it was like, as I got a little bit older, and now like Bob is like, shut it down. I'll be like, no. He's like, stop, just stop. And I'm like, no, I'm going to do this. And he's just like, don't load the bar, and then I'll get mad. And then I'm like, he's got a good point. I get home and I think about it, and it's like, all right. And then the next week I do my raw stuff, and then I get right back to the shirt work, and it's like, boom, everything's popping, everything. And I'm just like, thank God he was there to tell me not to, because I was ready to go.
Yeah, and if you would have went and did that extra stuff that next week when it was popping, probably wouldn't have happened.
No.
And what does that do? That if we're going around again in circles, we're going back to talking about the team and having the right people there because we have a hard time controlling ourselves. We're aggressive people. We're in this sport for a reason. And sometimes we need that person, especially somebody that we trust. Because I got lots of good stories of me in fights with my team at the gym going, bullshit, I can do more. And finally, eventually I started going, okay, they tell me I'm done, then I'm done. Like they know what they're talking about.
And it's crazy, like when you talk, like, because I think a lot of us have a little bit of manic in us. Like, we can all go off at certain points. And it's like when everybody at work, like Dom always says, he's like, you're the nicest guy in the world. And like, you're the nicest, and everybody likes you. And it's like, it's because I have to force myself to be that way. I'm like, why do you think I go to the gym and do all that stuff? I'm like, do you think I'm going to do this just because it's like, I love the sport? Yeah. There's also other things going on that I need to work through. And this is how I work through it. Some people smoke cigarettes, drink, drugs, that go off and do those things. I go off and I beat the weights up, and I beat myself up. And when I was younger, man, I'd have something bad go down, and I would go to that gym, and it would just be annihilation time. And it's like, now it's like, I got to go and train with someone now, because like, I'll go to the gym with my wife, and my wife will time the workouts, and she'll be like, because I'll start getting into that. If something's going wrong, I'll start pushing too much. And then she's like, well, you said you weren't going to go heavy today, and now you're doing this. And it's like, I'm fine. And she's like, no, you're not fine. I can tell by the tone. And then I stop and I got to think about it. And I'm like, you're right. I'm not fine. And you're right. Okay, let's go do something else.
Well, do you think, we're going to go deep now, do you think that as you learn that helps translate into your life where you don't need to beat yourself up as much as you did before? You kind of control things in life now? Because I mean, I know my first love of lifting was because of my anger issues, and
Yes,
that was how I controlled them.
Yeah.
And now I'm to the point where it's like I really don't get angry that much anymore, and when I do, I can stop it. And I think I learned all that in the gym. I learned how to control it in the gym by going, do I want to be the best in the world, or do I always want to beat myself up in here? Because you can't do both.
Yeah, it was like growing up, not my dad around. I didn't really know how much it like really affected me. Even though I had my stepdad, and he was great, and he did the best he could, and I really, really hated not having that father figure there to give me confidence and to build me up and to, do all the things that I saw other kids' dads doing. And so there was a lot of built up anger. And I was one of those kids growing up where, like, once you messed with me, I wasn't going to talk about it. I would just fight you. And I didn't care if I won or lost. And after a while, you stop losing because you fight so much that you start winning. And then people get scared. And then it's like you find a balance, but you also know that you did everything the wrong way. It was like, I can't be doing this. Like, my mom's upset. I'm kicked out of school. It's the third fight I've got in. What was the real point? Did it really do anything? Did it really better my life beating this kid up because he said something wrong or he threw the first punch? And it was like going to counselors, going to court, going to jail, and thinking, what am I doing? Like, I'm ruining my life. This is my life. People look at me different. People are scared to talk, be around me. They don't trust me because they think I'm going to fly off the handle. And it was like, I need to do something with this. And so then it was like, get into the gym. And then I just remember like starting to lift weights and then feeling myself get strong. And once I started seeing changes, I was I was like, I can control this. I can control my anger. I can control a lot of things because in my mind, I'm controlling the sets, the reps, how to control the weight. There was so much more about weightlifting and lifting weights that people didn't realize. I wasn't just going in there and throwing weight around and doing, I was going in there and learning how to set the dumbbells up the correct way. So when I leaned back, I could turn them and press them out. So I wasn't all sloppy. I took pride in being able to lift the heaviest dumbbells up by myself, press them, bring them back down, put them on my knees, stand up and rack them instead of launching them to the side, or setting up that deadlift form to make sure everything was great so I wasn't rounding my back, or making sure when I set my bench up is squeezing, like you said, squeezing the shoulder blades, tucking your, pushing your butt towards your back, squeezing the bar. There were so many things that I was learning and controlling, and it felt like I've got everything under control. But then there was that time where it was like, now I know how to control the anger because now I'm going for that big lift. So I would grunt and like I would make noises, and I still do it to this day, and people look at me weird, but it's just, it is what it is. And it's basically just I'm flipping the switch and I'm putting myself into nothing can stop me. Doesn't matter how much the weight is. I'm going to positively see myself do it before it's done, because I always felt in my mind, if I constantly saw myself doing it over and over, it's going to happen. And if I miss it, that's okay. I miss it. Everybody misses shots. If you don't take the shot, you're never going to know if you're going to get it or miss it. So it was like, now when someone got in my face and I would get revved up, I'd also think, chill out, stop. Okay, think about this. You fucking hurt your hand, you ain't benching tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
If you do this, you know what? You're going to see a cop because a cop's in the gym and they're all going to know about this. Now you're not going to be able to go to the meet because Trooper Brown was going to drive you, and now he's going to be upset that you just beat up this guy for starting a fight with you. And then it was like I was starting to grow up and not realize it. Like I was thinking about the consequences, because before it'd be like, Oh, you pushed me? Okay. And then that was it. Like, it was just go. There was no like in between. And now it's like, wait, I got consequences. You know, I want to do this. I've got goals now. Like, weightlifting gave me so much more than just like an outlet. It gave me a chance to really learn about myself. And it really gave me a chance to realize that like I have so much more to give than just being that pissed off young man whose father's not there. And you know what? I've got a loving mother that would do anything for me. And, you know, why are you hurting her because of something he's not doing? Like, why don't you do something and make her proud? And so then I started thinking about my mother, because my mother worked at a store in Livingston County. She's been there 41 years.
Wow.
Everybody knows me and everybody knows her because we've lived there our entire life. And so it was like, it was embarrassing that, you know, my mom had to hear these stories or know this. And you go to court and your mom's sitting there crying or going to jail. And you're thinking like, why the fuck is she crying? Like, you know, like, I'm fucking going to jail. And you don't think about that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I'm hurting her. You know, she doesn't want me to be going to jail and ruining my life because I'm too ignorant, because I'm mad at a man that doesn't have 2 cents to come and do anything about it because he gave up. So then it was like, when I had my kids, I was just like, I'm always going to be there for everything. And, you know, and then it was just like, I got like too over like controlling, like I got this and this. And it was like, slow down. And then the whole weightlifting thing, like, relax. Like, he's not going to choke on everything he has. He's not going to hurt himself if he does this. Like, I was always afraid of my son choking or like, you know, being around water and he was going to drown. If there was something bad, it was going to happen. It was going to happen to my son, because I was like, so luckily, like, they've been complete angels and never caused any trouble. And like, the things that I put my mother through and the stuff that I did as a young teenager, like, that shit's going to come back. And it never has. And knock on wood, because thank God, like, my kids have never done half the stuff I have, but it was like, it was a learning experience. And without weightlifting and powerlifting, I really don't know, you know, if I would be still here right now. I think that with the way the addictive personality and the drugs that was around and the trying to feel good and trying to feel confident, I feel a lot of people, when they don't have someone there looking out for them, and they don't have anyone there, and the father figure's not there, and the mother's working all the time, and they find love in places that's not the right place for them. And then they get down a path where it's like they end up just losing everything. And I could have been down that path. You know?
Well, I was even thinking too, with the supplement job you took, and then with the way it sounds you approached selling cars. I mean, how much of that was from powerlifting and learning how to be better in the gym, and then it transferring into life, even if you didn't recognize it, like how you were now dealing with people, how you were selling supplements, how you were selling cars.
I would never be selling cars if I never was selling supplements or doing the demos or being around big groups of people and being able to talk to anyone and being able to relate to anyone, because that's what basically I'm there. I'm basically there to give people information to help them make a better decision. And if I couldn't make better decisions myself, how am I going to tell you to make a better decision?
Mm-hmm.
I could be a total scumbag and screw you over. And then what's that going to do for my business? I'm going to be out of a job in a year or two. So, you know, I learned how to be, you know, like, okay, this might not be good for you right now. So maybe not, let's not do this. And then the customer looks at me and is like, I thought I was buying a car today. And it was like, I know, but maybe today is not the day. And you don't want to be that way, because then you're just like, in my business, like, people buy a car, it takes them 72 hours. They've already researched everything. They know what they want. Basically, prices are going to be the same no matter what now, because when you go, like where I live, like, everybody has worked for Ford. Everybody has family that works for Ford or the big three. The prices are transparent. So you're not undercharging or overcharging because it's a standard price. They've got to like you. If they don't like you, they're not going to do any business with you.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not honest with them, they're not going to do business with you, and they're going to tell everybody. Like the best thing about my job is someone who thanks me that end up not buying a car, but they send me a $50 gift card saying, thank you. I'm so glad that I met you and you helped me with this purchase that I didn't make. And then they send 3 other people who buy cars from me. And it's like, wow, that was awesome. And and no one sees that. People see like, well, you lost that sale. Why did you lose that sale? But you don't understand. I'm setting up more sales because I might not get this one, but I'm going to get more because you know what? I'm going to be honest. I'm going to tell them what they need to hear, not what I want them to hear.
Which goes back to training. It's about lifting with intent, learning that technique and training the technique and being patient and building it up. And then you get that big lift.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's so crazy how they just basically, like you said, like it's like breaking in a bench shirt. You get that bench shirt, you put it on, you make sure everything's right. You do everything right. You make sure that plates, like I was so anal about stuff. I'd have my plates all lined up perfectly. I'd have everything, the bar, I'd have everything perfect, feed everything. And it was just like, now when I see a customer come in, like my head goes through those mental checklists, like, okay, I got to get their license. I got to, talk to them, realize that I'm not here just to sell them a car. Let's learn about them. What do they like? They're going to tell me what they want. Okay, do we have a trade-in? All right, let's pre-qualify them. Maybe they don't want a $700 payment. Let's figure out what kind of payment they want. They're a $300 payment person. Like those mental checklists that you have when you get like into a meet and you have your mental checklist for your meet was the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Put them together using my powerlifting checklist to making it like, and it was funny when they showed me a checklist at work. They're like, yeah, we got this checklist that you do. And it's like a meat checklist, man. I'm like, didn't understand that. I was like, dude, I do this in my head every day. Like Vegas, this is for this is for this. These reps for this is for this. I got to have this singlet because of this. This has these wrists, it's just like, this has got to be in here. This has got to be there. And it's just like, oh my God, like I'm compartmentalizing. However, what do you say? Apartment.
Compartmentalizing.
Yep. And then it's like the same thing when you sell a car. It's like everything has to be done because if you skip one thing or you make one mistake and then you take a guy out there who wants the Lariat with the sunroof and he wants leather seats because he wants ventilated, and you walk out there and you take him to an XLT that doesn't have leather seats and no moonroof and not ventilated seats, this guy's like, did you even listen to what I was telling you? Like, you just ruined the sale. Now he's got a bad taste in his mouth. He thinks that you don't think his word and what he wants is important. You're showing him what you want him to see. And that's a hard part too, because a lot of people do that. I watch a lot of like people like salesmen when I was at Chrysler, not so much at Ford, because there's a lot of older people. I'd watch the new guys come in and they'd be so worried about making the sale that they would never even listen to the person wanting to buy the car. They would just listen to, oh, I know this is the cheapest payment and I know that they'll do it because it's cheap. They always thought everything was cheap. Well, people now, that's not what everybody wants. People now more buy what they want for their needs. So you gotta like think about, what do they need? You might think they want a $400 payment, but in their head, they want this car. They know it's $600 a month, but that's what they want, and they're ready for that. But you think they want the $450 payment. So you're like, oh no, this is what you need. And they're like, no, that's not what you need. And people get offended quick. I mean, nowadays people get offended over everything.
Mm-hmm.
Really got to be on your piece, because I work on commission only. So there's days where I don't sell a car. So, and then you've got to be positive, because it's like going to the gym and not hit lifts. You just come down on yourself and you can't get out of that rabbit hole. You go to the meet, what happens?
Yep.
Bomb. Well, if you don't sell a car for 3 or 4 days, you start thinking, I'm never going to sell a car again. Then you're just like, all your confidence is down. And it's just like, I never really, until now, Chad, I've never really thought about it as much as you're saying. Like, it really does. A lot of that, like traveling, supplement business, powerlifting, how it changed everything from what I was doing then, never knowing that it was going to come and be a part of my life as it is now.
Mm-hmm. It's amazing. I can't imagine who I would be without powerlifting. Like
Yeah, I don't.
from jobs to relationships to just how I deal with people on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, it's unbelievable because like the respect, like I don't know if I would respect people as much as I do now. Because there's people that I would have never respected when I was younger that I look at now that I respect so much because I want to learn so much more about them and what they're about. Whereas before I was like, fuck that guy, I didn't know what that guy was going through or what. Or it was just something I didn't like, and I was just pissed off at the world. But now you meet all these different people. Like you come to a powerlifting meet, it's just not a bunch of they classify meatheads anymore. You got entrepreneurs, you got firefighters, police officers, attorneys, you got engineers, you've got people who all aspects of life. I'm like estheticians to doctors to people who work construction jobs. I mean, you got a guy who is in law school talking to a guy over here who's a cement worker. But you know what? They're having a great time. They're having fun. There's no class barrier there. No one's worried about money. No one's worried about class. They're worried about how they're going to improve their deadlift,
Mm-hmm.
their bench, or their squat, or
I think that's one of the reasons I'll probably never leave this sport. I mean, whether I compete or not, like I this sport has given me so much. And one of the reasons I do this podcast, and we're pushing up on 3 hours we've been talking, it's like I love meeting people in the sport and I love finding out who they are. And I love sharing that with all the people that listen to this podcast, because it's like, dude, I love talking lifting, but I'm fascinated by what people do in their lives, and I'm fascinated by how powerlifting has changed their life and how they give back to the sport and stuff. It's just amazing to me.
it is because I've met so many cool people like Dave Murphy. Like Dave Murphy's a gentleman that was from the Illinois area that I met through my training partner Joe. They would battle each other, and like we called the old balls class, it was masters class, and they would laugh about it. And they were multi-ply lifters, but these are the top of the top. They're like Roger Ryan back. Roger Ryan's one of the greatest lifters of all time. He was still lifting at 700-800 pounds single ply at 50, 60 years old. And Smolinski and Murph are still in the mid sixes in their 50s, and they would battle. But Joe was one of the highest, intelligent IQ, but he could be around anyone. You would never know that this guy was worth probably, him and his wife combined was probably worth more than almost $500,000. Like they make probably that a year.
Mm-hmm.
They're probably $750,000 a year. They could pretty much buy anything they want, pretty close, And for me, here I am, like I'm making like $70,000-$80,000, struggling, a young kid. I'm 20 years younger than them, and and I'm doing everything I can to be the best. And here's Joe, who is the top of his basically his job. He's the vice president, so he's a very important person. He worked for Detman, and he was like the vice president of Detman. And then here's Murph. Murph, when he was younger, was one of the roadies and one of the bodyguards for like Waylon Jennings.
That's awesome.
And I'm this like real true badass right here. And I know Murph's very successful and he's very high IQ. And it's like you've got him, and you've got Joe, and then you've got me. And we're all hanging out. We're all benching, and we're all talking about benching, and we're emailing, and we're sending text messages, and we're talking for 3 hours. But then, Joe sees me struggling at something in life, and we go out to lunch, and then here he is helping me with my relationships, or helping me with my job, or helping me with, trying to be a better father, and trying to not be my father, but to be someone that I can like look up to and like have someone there to talk about, something to like, okay, I can't talk to my real dad about this, but I can talk to you about this, and you can help me, because it was like I was always searching for that.
Mm-hmm.
I was always that person. And here it is, a guy that I just train with one day a week, but I talk to almost every other day, and we still talk to this day. And he's been done lifting for years now. And it's just like, he'll send me a text out of the blue. The other night, he sent me a text, "Stay strong," you know? And like that right there meant everything to me. And it confused me at times. Like, what am I saying? And it's like, I've got to think like, does he mean stay strong because of what's going on in the world today and all the crazy stuff going? Or is it like, does he mean stay strong because he sees that I'm getting back up into like pushing those numbers again? Like, like he was always there.
It's probably all of it.
Yeah. And like one thing I wanted to like bring up that I was really laughing about is the team. So for years I had two girls as my side spotters. One was 133 pounds. One was 165 pounds. And then I had Bob, and then we had my other friend Joe. So Joe, instead of throwing the girls off, because it would be him on one side and a girl, well, they're different heights. So we would have the girls do the lift offs, and if he was doing a video so I could watch the transition, the lift, or the holding the board, I would have these girls do 805-pound lift offs, 825, heavy, just every week I was living in the shirt. And then people would be like, "Why are you having those girls lift off for you?" When social media started getting a little bigger, YouTube, they'd be like, "You're going to die. They're not going to be able to stop that way. They're not going to be able." And I posted a video of me dumping 805 and those girls catching it and then racking it for me. And I just smiled, and it was like, you people have no clue. I trust these girls. I would have them come to the big meets and ask for the guys to walk out of the picture. And then the judges would be like, "No, no, 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 we need," and I'd be like, "No, they are going to side spot. They will stay in. If you want to bring another spotter in, that's fine, but they're lifting off for me." And they'd be like, "It's your choice." And I said, "Yeah, it's my choice." Mm-hmm. And then it would be perfect. And I did it for years, to a point where we had guys from other gyms coming in, and we were talking about this today, and they'd be like, "Man, I wish I could teach these guys how to lift off like these girls. Like, these girls are phenomenal." But it was like, we trusted each other so much. Same thing as a team. We traveled together. We trained together. We went out together, concerts. But when we got in that gym, I didn't see two girls. I didn't see gender. I just saw family. I just saw my training partners. I know no matter what, this 805 is not going to kill me. I know this 825 is not going to kill me. If I miss it, they're going to put it back on the rack for me. Something's going to happen. And I had those same training partners for 4 years. Mm-hmm. And we never had ever an issue. The only time we had an issue in a meet, because Joe used to run. So Joe Smolinski started the WPC Can-Am, which was the world sanctioned meet here in Michigan in Romulus. And it was the biggest meet because you could break world records. Emma James would come. Jimmy Kolb would come. We'd have lifters from all over Canada, United States. Emma would come from, I think she's from Britain, England, Britain. I can't remember at the time. Roger Ryan, Jimmy, everybody come out. The only time, and they would side spot, and people would be like, "No, we don't want these girls." And we'd be like, "No, you want these girls to help you out." And the only time they had an issue, when Jimmy had his head like almost chopped off, he dumped a weight, and it was when he had his own spotters. And that was the only time we had it in a meet. And we ran like 3 or 4 of those meets, and those two females, women, they would do all the side, and people would be like, "No, I don't want them." And we're like, "No, they're going to be the best." And then guys would come up to him after and be like, Will you teach my guys how to do that 3-man handoff?" I'm like, they were the best.
There's a lot to that. The people that don't take the time to understand how important that is too. It's important having that team. It's important teaching people how to spot. And if you're taking a 3-man handoff, it's very important to teach how to actually do a good 3-man handoff.
Spotting in the spot, like mm-hmm. If someone touches it and you dump 1,100 to one side, that could be it for you.
Yep.
If they're not on sync bringing that bar out, if one's fighting to bring the bar out and the other one's not bringing it out fast enough, that's everything. And it just goes to show you, like, your team. And that's why I love, like, the whole aspect of powerlifting is It's not a single person sport. I don't care what anybody says. Like, if you want to meet the most genuine, coolest, all around greatest people in a sport, by far go to a powerlifting meet. And then if you want to see how really cool it is, go to a bodybuilding show and look at the difference between the competitors and the powerlifters, the people involved. I love bodybuilding. I grew up watching it. I have a lot of friends that compete in it. You look at that atmosphere and you tell me which one you want to be a part of.
Yeah, I tell people that are afraid to do their first meet, I'm like, listen, just go to any local powerlifting meet. I guarantee you, as soon as people find out it's your first one, they're going to be excited that you're coming to join them. And everything you hit's going to be a PR. So no matter what you hit, people are going to cheer for you.
You're going to have people cheering harder for you you've never even met in your life.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to see people that you look up to that are cheering you on, and you're going to be like, wow, that guy is a really strong lifter, and now he's cheering me on. Now that's going to get you psyched up, you know? When you're competing against someone in bodybuilding, that guy hates you. He thinks you're going to beat you, and he doesn't want nothing happy to happen to you. He wants you to be posing your color or something. It's like you go to a powerlifting meet, and you got two guys going neck and neck, but you might see that guy come out and spot for him or come out to help him do his commands or say this or tell him to do this, you know, and you're like, he's helping him. This guy's going to beat him, but he's actually helping him beat him.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I remember when Janae Kroc, I beat the record. It was the Michigan State Championship. I had fought for this record for years, and it was the Michigan State 220 multiply bench record, and Janae was the head judge, and like half an inch, tuck your elbows, quarter inch, right there, press, and like basically guided me to my best bench that I had at that moment. Like 25 PR, broke Janae's record, like, and was like, I was like, oh my God, like you basically, if you wouldn't have helped me and told me everything I needed to do at that point, I probably wouldn't have broke that record. Because on that day, I had been bothered with a shoulder injury. I made a nasty weight cut. I wasn't really feeling good. My training partners were there and did everything I needed them to do. But at that point, Janae knew exactly what I needed to do and didn't have to say a word and could have been like, you're not breaking my record today, but did everything to help me break that record. And I remember Matt Zwang was right there on the right, and that was an old power lifter from back. Like, remember he used to face Jesse Kellum, and he was a really good 198 lifter. And I remember him looking at me, and he's like, you did it, big gun. And he always called me big gun. So every time he'd call me, he'd be like, what are you doing today, big gun? And I remember him just looking at me, and I was just like, two of the guys that I grew up worshiping were right there helping me beat records that they set. And I was just like, how can you not love the sport, man? How can you not? And then I had like lifters there with me that were first time meters. And like you said, everybody's cheering them on. You know, people who don't even go out of their house. I remember my buddy Todd and his wife. Todd was like just brand new into lifting. So was his wife. They really didn't know anyone. They had just met us. They drove all the way out to Grand Rapids. They both competed. She had never lifted or done anything in her life. Hit PRs. They broke records. And next thing you know, that's all they're talking about is powerlifting. You know, and they never did a sport in their life. They never did. He was a medical doctor and she worked in a bank. Never played sports, basketball, nothing. And there were just two people that came into the gym and saw us in a corner and said, what are you guys doing? And we're like, we're lifting, we're powerlifting. And they're like, powerlifting? They're like, how do you do it? And we're like, well, why don't you join us? And now Todd is a professional bodybuilder. And he still uses some of those same practices that he learned powerlifting with us to turn into one of the best diet coaches in the sport. And he's also an IFBB pro. And it was just like, to think like, we watched him come in as like 148-pound doctor, medical doctor who had no filter, like just couldn't believe what was coming out of his mouth. And he would be like, I mean, he would tell everybody like, that sucks, or this is stupid, or like, you need to do this. I mean, he basically like left his practice because he didn't want to prescribe people medications that they didn't need, but they wanted. And he's like, I'm trying to teach people how to diet, and I'm trying to teach them how to come out of opioids. I'm trying to teach them this, and they don't want to listen. They just want the pills. And he's like, I can't do this. He's like, I'm going to become a dietitian. I'm going to go back to school. So now not only is he a medical doctor, but he's also a chemist. He designed his own supplements. He's worked with men, women of all ages, powerlifting, fitness, bikini, like IPP Pro. And I'm just thinking, like, if he would have never met us and never walked into that, and we talk about this, he would never be where he was. Yeah. He would still be a doctor sitting, hating his practice, giving people medications that they want, that he doesn't want them to take. And he's like, I'm so thankful for you and Bob and these guys, because, like, you know, obviously we didn't do that. He did all the work, but that little bit that he learned from us put him to where he's at now. Just like how you said, like, powerlifting got me ready for my job now. Like, all the things I learned, powerlifting is helping me be successful. And no, I'm not the best car salesman. I know I'm not the greatest. And there's a kid that's younger than me, Brendan, who sells more cars than me, and he's only been in the job for 1 or 2 years. And, you know, and I can be like, yeah, he's a better car salesman. He's a better salesman than me. And that's okay, because I learned from him. He learns from me. I learned from everybody. And just like in powerlifting, I was used to be the weakest, and I became one of the stronger ones. Now I teach people, and I learn from other people, and that's just the way it is. If you never stop learning.
The rising tide raises all ships.
Yeah.
Jeff, this has been awesome. We're like a little over 3 hours, so I bet I'm terrible at putting a nix on things, but it's so fun talking about it. And it's just so interesting, because we did meet at the Olympia, but we didn't really get to sit down and talk a lot. And so I learned some stuff from your Instagram, but to sit down and just talk with you is awesome. And just get to know you.
I really appreciate this. Thank you.
You're welcome. It was a blast having you on. Probably have to have you on again at some point when I catch up with the list of all the people I have now that I want to talk to.
Yeah, and then maybe the Cincinnati Pro-Am, maybe there.
Yeah, I'm going to go. Amber's competing. Yeah. Isn't it in Kentucky though, or something?
I think it's right. Isn't APF the APF Pro-Am, right?
Yeah, the women's Pro-Am that Laura puts on.
Yeah, so it's like Kentucky, Cincinnati, right in that area.
Yeah.
Well, then we'll get to catch up then.
Yeah, definitely. I actually got to look for my tickets at that one, and then I am. Are you going to the Arnold? Me and my wife are thinking about maybe going one day. So probably what it would be, Saturday or Sunday. What do you think it is? I'm trying to think. Like, I'm not sure with her schedule, because she does every other weekends, and I don't want it, like, if it's gonna fall into, like, she can't get a training day in, then we're gonna cut it. I want to focus on her training, because that's more important. Right. But if you do, I'll shoot you a text and let you know. Yeah, definitely, because I'm gonna be. I know Amber's working Anderson booth, and then I'll be hanging out there, and then I know Jimmy and AJ are competing. So I want to check that out. Yeah, that's going to be fun. Thinking about doing those maybe in the future? Last man stand? I need some more. I need to get the shoulder healed up, and then I need to get more time in that shirt. Yeah, I think you need to get a couple, just to kind of figure them out, because I think maybe like learning the bench daddy, then learning the F6 or even an overkill, or trying kind of figuring out, like you said, like they're still stock shirts, but you never know, one might be better than the other for you. Yeah. Because you with reversing that, how you did the reverse on the insert. Yeah. I mean, who would have ever thought that? I mean, that was some genius shit right there. It made a big, I think we even talked about, because I wouldn't mind trying an overkill either, because I think we talked about, like, I don't like how big the sleeve is. I like something a little snugger on my arm. Yeah. And I think that's part of why I tweaked my shoulders when I think the girl grabbed one end of it and it shifted. Yeah. And it put all that weight on that one side. And I'm like, I didn't have that support. My other shirts gave me that little support in my anterior delt. Exactly. And that's a huge factor when your elbows are coming out and you're moving around, nothing's staying tight. I get it. Yeah. 100%. Hopefully Rudy has more material. I know he's backlogged. He's trying to get everybody done. Poor guy. He's only got one, maybe two other people who actually help him, because he's all hands on himself. So yeah. I'll speak a little bit in his ear and see if we can hook you up, because he'll do a lot of measurements. Like, you're going to have to send him a lot of measurements, and kind of want to be within like a 10-pound
range of where your weight is, because I don't want you to drop too much weight or gain too much weight. You kind of want to be stable,
right?
Because stuff is to the T. I will give you that. I mean, there's times where I gained 15 pounds and it was I'm never gonna touch, or I lost 10 pounds and it's where's my top end? It's gone.
Yeah, 5 or 10 pounds can make a big difference.
And people don't realize that, man. It's a big difference for sure.
All right, sir. I'm gonna hit the outro, man. It was awesome. Awesome talking to you.
Good seeing you.
Thanks for listening to the Courage Barbell Unlimited podcast. For more information, please visit couragebarbell.com. Until next time.